Hello, 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 my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. Welcome. I'm Rosebud Reads, and welcome to my book garden. Actually, welcome to my basement, but we're here for a good time, so does it really matter? You know, as I say that, it does sound kind of creepy. Maybe I think I'll have to change that, but welcome. I'm glad you're here. Going to give it a little time. I don't really see anyone here yet. Oh, I stand corrected. Hi, Chi-Chi Kiki. Welcome. How are you doing today? It's April 1st, April Fool's Day. Did you do anything practical jokey today? I unfortunately did not. No jokes. No jokes. That's okay. All good. My mom's birthday is actually tomorrow, and one of the things that used to irritate her was that whenever she would tell someone it was her birthday today, it'd be like, oh, haha, April Fool's, and then would be very surprised when it actually was her birthday. But yes. But welcome! It's the first Golden Terrace session. I am so excited. But yeah, regarding Golden Terrace, same sort of liabilities issues. I do not own anything connected to Golden Terrace. I'm not the author. I'm not the translator. I don't pretend to own anything. The only thing I own are the physical copies in my hand and my time. So please don't come for me. This is a 17 plus book. It will have adult themes. I'm not quite sure what adult themes. But there may be some spicy stuff. There may be some very serious topics. So just be aware. The stream itself is a very chill stream. You see, I will talk with whoever's here, and I will make side comments if that is not your kind of thing. Maybe this isn't, but maybe stay and see. You might be surprised. But yes, I am Rosebud Reads, and this is my stream. But anyway, since it is our first session, I will read the back of Golden Terrace so that we kind of will get the little summary, and then we will begin. I should probably hook it in. So, all right. It is the year 25 of the Yuan Tai era of the Great Zhao Empire. The renowned Marquis of Qingning, commander of the Beiyan cavalry, Fu Shen, is injured on the battlefield at the northern border. Returning with a broken leg to the capital, Fu Shen learns that the emperor has conferred a marriage for him. Ooh, with another man. To make matters worse, Fu Shen's spouse is his political nemesis, the famed imperial investigator of the Feilong Guard, Yan Xiaohan. In spite of the political differences that stand between them in court, Fu Shen and Yan Xiaohan gradually start to accept each other's presence in their shared home. Yet, as they learn to navigate their new life together, it is the calm before the storm. The mystery behind the attack at the northern border begins to unfold, unveiling dangers that threaten the peace of Great Zhao. Then a little about the author. Cang Wu Bin Bai is an acclaimed author of the Jinjiang Wuzhusheng platform. I've probably said one of those wrong, and I apologize. Her writing combines a witty style with flowing prose and twisting plotlines, garnering a much devoted readership. Golden Terrace is her masterpiece novel. Ooh. Well, I very much look forward to reading it. And on that note, we begin. Okay, Gotta strap it in real quick. Prologue. In the 25th year of the Great Zhao's Yuan Tai era, the Eastern Tartars invaded the northern regions. The Beiyuan cavalry, the border guard, mustered at the Wuding River with the forces of the provinces of Ningzhou and Tongzhou and inflicted a crushing defeat on the Eastern Tartars troops, driving them back over 700 li and retaking the Xingqiao Pass. I'm going to have fun in this chapter, I can already tell. In the 8th month of the same year, the Eastern Tartar Uji tribe begged to surrender and submit to the authority of Great Zhao, become a vassal state, and pay yearly tribute. On the 16th day of the 8th month, envoys of both sides completed a ceremony of surrender on the banks of the Wuding River, arranging that the Yuji would pay a tribute of furs, medicinal ingredients, horses, gold and silver, and such like, and send the Khan's son to the capital to study Central Plains etiquette at the Imperial Academy. So basically, they're going to hold him hostage to teach him. In the 9th month, the court issued a decree commanding the Beiyan cavalry's commander, the Marquis of Jingning, Fu Shen, to escort the Eastern Tartars' diplomatic mission to the capital to be presented at court. Hostilities had just been settled, and the Yuji were withdrawn beyond the pass. Fu Shen had no fear of leaving trouble behind him for the time being, so he ordered his subordinate Yun Huan to return to the northern border with his main force, while he personally led a team of elite cavalry to escort the diplomatic mission south. On the 9th day of the 9th month, the diplomatic mission was passing through the Qingsha Gap when they suddenly sensed the ground start to tremble. The cliffs on both sides collapsed with a rumble. Stones rained down, horses took fright, and bolted. In the rush, the carriage of the Eastern Tartars' youngest prince had no time to dodge. It was smashed to pieces by a huge boulder dropping out of the sky. That is going to cause some issues. So much for a peaceful resolution. The terrain of the Qingsha Gap was steep and narrow, but it was situated within Great Zhao and had always been peaceful. Reasonably speaking, there shouldn't have been an ambush. On the way, while Fu Shen had remained alert and taken precautions, he had never thought that there would be a cataclysmic disaster like this on his own doorstep. At first, he had no attention to spare for the eldest princes or youngest ones. Seeing falling stones rolling toward him from up ahead, he decisively turned his horse's head, gave a loud cry of "Retreat!" and led the way in a charge back to the entrance they had come in by. Smoke and dust filled the air, nearly dyeing the whole valley the color of sand. Amidst a thicket in the heights, an elaborate crossbow mechanism turned. The coldly gleaming sinister arrowhead took precise aim at the Beiyuan commander as he urged his horse into a mad gallop. Ooh. Keen instincts tempered on the battlefield saved him in this moment of imminent peril. The crossbow bolt streaked towards him. As if he had eyes on the back of his head, Fu Shen flattened himself while yanking on the reins. The cavalry horse came to a sudden halt, its front hooves rising high, and turned a half circle in place, narrowly avoiding the deadly cold bolt. The arrowhead skimmed past his back, then buried itself with a clang half an inch deep in the cliff face, was immediately drowned in rolling rock and sand. Who was trying to kill him? The ice-cold thought only flashed through Fu Shen's mind for a moment. The next instant, the shouts of his personal guards around him pulled him back to the human world. "General, look out!" The boulder falling from overhead blotted out the sky and completely cut off his backward look. On the 9th day of the 9th month in the 25th year of the Yuntai era, the Eastern Tartars' diplomatic mission was attacked in Tongzhou's Qinsha Gap. The Eastern Tartars' youngest prince perished on the spot. The better half of the diplomatic mission party was lost. The Marquis of Jingning Fushen, who had come to escort the diplomatic mission, had his legs crushed by a boulder and was gravely injured. He was taken back to the northern border through the night by trusted bodyguards. While he survived by a stroke of luck, he was unlikely to make a full recovery. Word was sent back to the capital. It threw the court and the commons into an uproar. At all levels of society, no one was unshaken. Emperor Yuntai was furious. He issued an imperial edict commanding the 3 judicial chief ministries to strictly investigate this case, then issued a special decree, giving generous compensation to Fushen. To the Marquis of Jingning original official salary, he added 1,000 shi, moved to confer upon him the title of General, Defender of the Nation, bestowed a purple ribbon and golden seal, and permitted him to continue to hold his command while he returned to the capital to recover. The capital was abuzz with the news of Fushen's injury. Quite a few people had been making guesses in private as to whose hands the command of the Baiyun army would fall into now that he had been injured. The emperor's special decree temporarily silenced the multitudinous mouths. His command remained. He was only temporarily leaving the north. If General Fu was sufficiently clever and tactful, he would understand the kind intentions involved when he had heard the tune, and after returning to the capital would give up his command in favor of someone more qualified, handing it over to His Majesty. His legs in exchange for a life of glory and splendor. It seemed then that His Majesty, not merely doing all that humanity and duty called upon him to do for a heroic subject, might even be said to be giving him rather preferential treatment. The Marquis of Jingning, who was at the center of this gossip, received the imperial degree along with the Baiyun army, but he made no move. Only at the end of the 9th month did Fushen send a memorial to the throne detailing arrangements for handing over military affairs at the northern border garrisons, and requesting the emperor to permit him to relinquish his post and convalesce. At this memorial to the throne, Emperor Yuntai breathed a sigh of relief. According to convention, he refused the resignation request and granted Fushen permission to depart the north and return to the capital. Many people in the capital were counting the days on their fingers and looking out expectantly, waiting to see what this Marquis of Jingning, famed for his military prowess, had become. Meanwhile, thousands of li away at twilight, a small carriage left heavily guarded Yanzhou city under the escort of bodyguards, speeding in the direction of the capital. That's the prologue. Chapter 1. Unfortunately, there are no fun titles with the chapters. It's just either titled Prologue or Chapter 1. Oh man. Going south from Yangzhou, they passed through Gongyang, Baitan, and other such places until they reached Miyun, at which point the capital city hove into view in the distance. That's a new word, hove. I'm guessing it means like came into view. The weather was chilly with the coming of autumn. In the north, the first snow had already fallen, but in the vicinity of the capital it was still pleasantly cool, perfectly suited for travel. As midday approached, a team of fine riders came along the public road. The lead rider raised his eyes and looked into the distance from his elevated position. He saw a tea kiosk set up by the road, then gently pulled up his reins, slowing. When the carriage behind him had caught up, he leaned down, knocked twice on the carriage window's wooden slats, and requested instruction. "General, we've been going all night. Why don't we stop and rest, then continue on our way?" A slit opened in the carriage's curtains. A man's deep voice floated out, accompanied by the scent of bitter medicine. "Is there a place ahead? Is there a place up ahead to take refreshment? If so, we should stop here to catch our breath. The men have had a hard time of it." The man accepted the order. The whole party galloped towards the tea kiosk up ahead, sending clouds of dust flying where they passed, drawing sidelong glances from travelers stopped by the side of the road to rest. This team of riders bore no banner. They all wore narrow-sleeved, cross-collared military robes of green, each with a vigorous figure, grand and austere. Though they had not made their identities known, the words "not to be trifled with" were written clear as day across their faces. The proprietor, I probably said that wrong, of the tea kiosk had weathered many hardships over the years. He was used to seeing people come and go, and he said no more than was needed. The lead rider dismounted and offered an ingot of silver, then ordered his subordinates to go have some tea and rest. He himself, meanwhile, found a table in the shade, wiped it clean, and instructed the proprietor to prepare hot tea and several kinds of refreshments. Then he turned and went outside, where he helped a white-faced, frail young gentleman who looked like a chronic invalid out of the carriage. This gentleman's footsteps were insubstantial. He had a sickly look and could only walk with someone lending him an arm. It took him an age to shuffle over the small distance between the carriage and the tea kiosk. When he had finally sat down at the table, he coughed repeatedly, as though his body couldn't have stood further strain. The other customers sitting under the awning actually breathed a sigh of relief for him when he had sat down. Just watching him had made them feel worn out. Strange to say, while the man looked like he might breathe his last at any moment, he had an indescribable air about him that made it impossible to take one's eyes off him. He had an outward form that could be picked out at 10,000 li, though his was not the type of elegance beloved of contemporaries. Of a man with a face like a beautiful woman, gentle as spring flowers. Instead, he had well-drawn brows and phoenix eyes, a high nose and thin lips, an appearance that exuded keenness and bitter cold. The man was very tall. As if accustomed to looking down at others, his eyelids were half lowered. He brimmed all over with careless languor. He was also wasted down to a handful of ailing bones. It seemed that even the tea kiosk, somewhat heavy, coarse porcelain bowl, could snap his wrist with its weight. But when he sat upright, his gaunt back was perfectly straight, like a stalk of bamboo sticking out of the earth, a sword that had faced fire and been tempered in water, whose chill blade, though riddled with scars, could still drink blood. A feeble body in no way prevented him from looking with scorn upon all around him, marching through the world unhindered. The merchants traveling on foot couldn't resist craning their necks, just like a gaggle of rapidly focused geese. raptly focused geese. This continued until the young gentleman, after slowly drinking a bowl of tea, put the porcelain bowl down on the table with a clatter. Gentlemen, your necks are all stretched long enough to be used to tie up donkeys. Well, am I that good-looking? The vigorous men eating and drinking beside him gave a shudder upon hearing this. Among the geese, some averted their gazes resentfully, while a few unusually avid ones actually came up to make conversation. Where did you come from, sir? Are you also going to the capital? Jian Zun, who had been closely waiting upon this man's master, Xian Sun, felt his scalp go numb, ready to hang the speaker from the tree outside if the young gentleman so much as said scram. But who would have thought that this exceedingly standoffish-seeming gentleman would be unexpectedly lenient? He answered mildly, I came from Yanshao City in the north, headed to the capital to seek medical treatment. Their party was dressed informally, not wearing swords, and the carriage wasn't in a very grand style. While the guards were overbearingly lofty, the gentleman in charge wore clothes of ordinary color and cut, which did not appear to be in the fashionable style of the capital. The traveling merchants guessed that they were perhaps the traveling party of the young master of some wealthy family in Yangzhou. Because Yangzhou City was a strategically important location for the defense of the frontier, its customs were aggressive. It really was common to travel with a retinue that came from military backgrounds. In a chance encounter with a stranger, the traveling merchants couldn't very well inquire directly about his illness, so they turned to speaking of another novel affair. Since you came from the north, sir, did you happen to encounter General Fu's carriage setting out? He is returning home in glory. What splendor must he be traveling in? Xian Shun nearly choked on his tea. The young gentleman raised his long brows and asked with interest, General Fu, the same General Fu I'm thinking of? Naturally! Who apart from the Marquise of Jingning has such a glorious reputation? The young gentleman seemed to develop an enthusiasm for the conversation. He pursued, It seems to me that you are quite well informed about General Fu? Certainly not, certainly not, his interloper said, waving a hand. We merchants who travel up and down the country often hear news of General Fu on the road. In the years he has defended the northern regions, the roads have been at peace. Business has been immensely easier to do than before. Even when the common people in the capital speak of General Fu, it is without exception with admiration. You wouldn't know it. Last year, when General Fu led the Baiyun cavalry at putting the Tartars to rout, I was coming back from buying furs in the north, and the avenues and alleys were all abuzz, everyone saying, With Commander Fu in the north, the capital can sleep easy. The performances staged in the opera houses, they were all about him and his heroics. The magnificent reputation of the Baiyun army and the Marquise of Jingning could be seen from this small example. The Baiyun cavalry was known as Great Zhao's last line of defense at the northern border. Since its establishment, it had been controlled by the Fu family. Its earlier form had been a border garrison led by the Duke of Ying, Fujian. To the people of the Central Plains, the traveling herdsmen who ruled the grasslands to the north were known as Tartars. Decades ago, the Tartars had experienced internecine strife, followed by a schism. Portion of the tribes were forced to move west, where they had dealings and intermarried with the Hu, the Sogdia, and other such people of the western regions. They came to be known as the Western Tartars. Another portion, meanwhile, occupied the central and eastern portions of the grasslands, which were comparatively fertile. They were known as the Eastern Tartars. 23 years ago, when Emperor Yun Tai, Sun Jun, had recently ascended the throne, the Eastern Tartar tribes had staged an outrageous invasion of Great Zhao. The border forces of the time were weak and folded at a single attack, while the Tartars had a strong military. They cut through the defenses like splitting bamboo. They plundered and massacred without restraint in the north, even turning Xiangqing and Beiyangning, in two strategically important border points, into ghost towns with their slaughter. Man, I am struggling with all these city names, but I'm trying. I'm sorry if it is painful to listen to. Voices in court advocating for peace talks grew louder and louder, but Emperor Yun Tai was at the time in the prime of life, utterly unwilling, as the lord of this celestial empire, to bow his head before mere barbarians. Fujian just happened to have been transferred from the south to Ganzhou due to his meritorious service, so Emperor Yun Tai promoted him to military commissioner of Guangzhou, commanded him to lead the forces of the three provisions of Guangzhou, Ningzhou, and Yuanzhou to resist the Eastern Tartars. For the course of 2 years, Fujian and his two sons, along with the officers under their command, assembled a force of 100,000 and eliminated the Tartars inside the pass. Fujian's oldest son, Fu Tingzhang, even went past the Great Wall, leading his troops straight into the heart of the grasslands, nearly conquering the Eastern Tartars' capital, failing only because Fujian died of illness midway. Following this campaign, Fujian was posthumously given the title of Duke of Ying, General, Pillar of the Nation. Fu Tingzhang inherited the title of Duke of Ying, control over the military affairs of the province of Guangzhou, Ningzhou, and Yuanzhou. The second son, Fu Tingxian, was given the title of General, Defender of the Nation, and control of the military affairs of Yanshao and Yuzhou. Together, these two built for Great Zhao an iron line of defense on the northern border. The border forces led by the Fu family came to be known as the Beiyun Cavalry. From the 6th year of Yun Tai to the 18th year of Yun Tai, over a decade with the deterrent of the Beiyuan cavalry, the Eastern Tartars went into temporary hibernation. The border was at peace. No major hostilities arose. This lasted until the 19th year of Yun Tai, when Fu Tingzhang was killed by Eastern Tartar assassins, and the Eastern Tartars allied with the northern border's Xi clan to once again invade Great Zhao. Fu Tingxian led an isolated force deep into the enemy's encirclement and ultimately died on the battlefield. There was nearly a reenactment of the enemy host reaching the city gates. But unlike in the previous instance, the court now did not have so many elite soldiers and able generals at its disposal, and Emperor Yun Tai was no longer as resolute and enterprising as he had been in his younger years. The war faction and the peace faction argued several times in the morning court, and at last came to the silliest yet also the sagacious decision. They put forward Fu Tingzhang's eldest son, Fu Shen, who was not yet of age for the capping ceremony, and pushed him out onto the battlefield. The Eastern Tartars had a bitter hatred for the Fu family, and they had come on this expedition in order to get revenge. It was up to the one who had made the mess to clean it up. Moreover, Fu Shen had been among the army alongside his father and uncle since he was young. It was said that Fu Tingxian often remarked with emotion that there is a worthy successor in the next generation. So, strictly speaking, he ought also to count as command material. And of course, it's in parentheses, so command material. The reason seemed abundant. But looking back on past dynasties, when had it ever been right for ministers who did nothing but eat all day to hole up at the rear while making a teenager go on ahead to face the jackals and tigers? Great luck came amidst great misfortune. The Fu family perhaps really was a den of stars of command collectively reincarnated. Fu Shen outshone his predecessors. He had an exceptional genius for military command. The northern frontier was in a state of emergency. Reinforcements could only be requested from nearby Tangzhou and Tangzhou. Tangzhou and Tangzhou. But when Fu Shen was put forward, he didn't count on obtaining help from his own people. He gathered the Beiyun cavalry and met with the Ji clan's main force at Yuanzhou's 3 passes, and with the inducement of opening trade routes and permitting them to join the empire, borrowed the cavalry of the Western Tartars, Yeliang tribe, and outflanked the Tartar Ji allied forces, dividing and crushing them. Only by attacking from 2 angles at once in a pincer maneuver was he able to resolve the threat to the northern frontier. After the battle, the Yeliang tribe joined the empire, and its cavalry mixed with the Beiyuan cavalry, giving as his reason that the front was too long, making it inconvenient to maneuver. Fu Shen returned command of the border forces, the 3 provinces of Guangzhou, Ningzhou, and Yushao, to the center, concentrating on operating the frontier defenses of Yunzhou and Yanzhou. Following the Battle of the 3 Passes, Fu Shen formally took up the post of commander of the Beiyuan cavalry and was granted the title of Marquis of Jingning. Given the merit Fu Shen had won working to save that desperate situation, it would have been fitting and proper for him to inherit the rank of duke. But Emperor Yuan Tai wavered, and despite of the system passed down by his predecessors, not only permitted the 3rd son of the Fu family to take his nephew's place in inheriting the title of Duke of Ying, but even gave his tacit consent to Fu Shen leaving the Duke of Ying manor to reside elsewhere. Ooh, political intrigue right there. The discerning could all see that His Majesty was scared of the Fu family, worried lest the family should produce a Duke of Ying that would be remembered throughout the ages. But some people were doomed to sail against the current. In a few short years, while the Marquis of Jingning, Fu Shen, held command over the Beiyuan cavalry, he became the mainstay of Great Zhao in a single leap, refusing to pass on the responsibility he was called upon to fulfill, firmly occupying the position of a thorn in the flesh of the Tartars and the Zi. The northern border had been peaceful in recent years, the people of the north living and working in peace and contentment. The best part of this was owed to his contributions. So long as Fu Shen remained in the army, even if he sat there unmoving and acted as a mascot, he was the greatest deterrent to the other people of the north. While the common people blew hot air, the young gentleman gentleman at first listened as though it were a joke, but when he heard the capital can sleep easy, all trace of a smile disappeared. Xian Shun saw him lost in thought and quickly snatched up the teapot, pouring more tea for him. Deliberately interrupting, he said, young master, we have to get back on the road in the afternoon. Take some more refreshment. The gentleman came back to himself. He picked up his bowl and sipped the hot tea. The corners of his mouth lifted. Unexpectedly, there was a bit of ridicule in his smile. To himself, he feelingly remarked, if these words spread, how many people will lose sleep? A customer next to them wearing a bamboo hat had been drawn in by their conversation. With a mysterious manner, he interjected, people often say, utmost strength is followed by disgrace. Utmost prosperity must lead to decline. Don't you think that after so many years of doing battle in the north, the Marquis of Jingning perfectly suits these words? The famous generals of the past were either short-lived or solitary, because they were all stars of command come to the mortal world, their lives ruled by battle, unlike ordinary people. As I see it, the Marquis of Jingning was most likely born under the Qisha star. His legs may be the consequence of too much murder. Well, that's kind of shitty. Hey, you protected our nation for years, and now because you've had to take so many lives, yeah, we'll take your legs. There was a crisp snap as the bowl in Xian Shu's hand broke into several pieces. Blood dripped from the cracks between his fingers. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound. They were completely astounded. For a time, the inside of the tea kiosk was so quiet it was embarrassing. Your grip is too strong. I'll buy you an iron rice bowl next time to keep you from wrecking things. The young gentleman's expression hadn't changed one bit. Indifferently, he said, go dress the wounds yourself. Don't forget to pay for the damage. Xian Shun lowered his head and gave an assent. The conversation that had been interrupted by this interlude could not continue. However colorful the speaker's description of immortals descending to Earth, the speech had not been propitious. This time a tea bowl had broken. Next time perhaps he would be surrounded and given a beating. The only one who seemed to want to fan the flames was the out-of-place gentleman. Smiling, he said, interesting. According to what you said, friend, either a short life or solitude must fall upon such people. Since the Marquis of Jingning is already crippled, it would seem that he will be able to find himself a wife soon. Xian Shun was taken aback. Someone banged on the table and leapt up in anger. How can a good man have the misfortune to be without a wife? A hero like the Marquis of Jingning can have any kind of woman he wants. Right! Well said, another person said in agreement. And if he prefers men, there are plenty of good men out there waiting to marry him. The tea kiosk instantly erupted into earth-shattering laughter. The previous dynasty had treated marriage between men as a refinement. So while the great Zhao dynasty prohibited common men from marrying each other, there was no such taboo for nobles. There was even precedent for the emperor to confer a marriage between men. As a notable wealthy bachelor of the capital, the Marquis of Jingning was the man of many noble girls' dream. Yet time had dragged on, and no marriage had been settled for him. Hence some had guessed that he had unusual interests. Once this romantic subject was mentioned, everyone became even more engrossed in conversation. The young gentleman did not interject again, only quietly listened to them discussing the Marquis of Jingning's whole life, a smile lingering at the corners of his lips the whole time, as if he were listening to an extremely interesting, extremely splendid story. After a long silence, Xian Sun prompted him. Young master, midday has passed. Shall we go? We shall. The young gentleman extended a hand so Xian Sun could help him up. He indolently cupped his hands in salute towards the crowd of traveling merchants. Friends, I am in a hurry to reach the capital, so I will be going on ahead. Everyone raised their hands to bid him farewell. Xian Sun helped him into the carriage and lowered the curtains. When the carriage and the horses had trundled several hundred paces forward, Xian Sun heard him say from inside, Changshan, give me the medicine. But did Mr. Du tell you to take the medicine an hour in advance? Xian Sun took an exquisite purse from his clothes. Contained an eggshell porcelain bottle. We won't be entering the capital for another 4 hours. Don't talk nonsense. Hand reached out from under the curtains and snatched the porcelain bottle away. The capital barracks are just up ahead. Can pull one over on these ordinary people, but we are sure to be recognized when we reach the capital barracks. Where will I find the time to start playing lame then? Xian Sun muttered, But sir, you're actually lame to begin with. The sickly gentleman, the same Marquis of Jingning Fu Shen spoke of by everyone, whose life was ruled by battle, threw back his head and swallowed a finger-sized brown pill. Sneering, he said, Cheng Shan, between a general with hope of recovery and a completely crippled invalid, what do you think is most likely to make people lose sleep? Xian Sun said nothing more. Fu Shen passed the porcelain bottle back to him and closed his eyes to await the paralysis about to spread through his limbs. Softly, he said, Let's go. Oh, hello, whoever just joined. I see there's another person here. I don't know who, but welcome. All right, quick tea break. Okay. Oops. That would be my keyboard. Chapter 2. Evening at the western outskirts capital barracks, 100 li outside the capital. Zhang He, commander of the Rufeng barracks, came out in person to greet their party. Xian Shun stepped forward to salute him. Before he had completed his salute, Zhang He had already casted him aside. He leapt impatiently towards the carriage and lowered himself to make obeisance. This subordinate commander of the Rufeng barracks, Zhang He, pays his respects to General Fu. The Rufeng barracks ranked as the head of the 5 major capital barracks. Zhang He was a third-class officer, already a very high position. But his attitude towards the Marquis of Jingning was respectful in the extreme. A hand wrapped in bandages pushed open the hanging curtains. A dense medicinal odor slowly wafted out. Fu Shen wore no armor. He had only draped a robe over himself. His chest and arms were covered in bandages, and a blanket that hung down to his feet lay over his legs. His face was pale, his lips colorless, his hair loose. He seemed to be living on a single breath, so frail that a wind would knock him over. Fu Shen nodded in greeting. Commander Zhang, I trust that you have been well since we last parted. Pardon me. Find it difficult to move and cannot rise to greet you. Zhang He had already heard that he had been gravely injured and couldn't walk, but he hadn't expected his injuries to be this grave. Originally, he hadn't especially credited the rumors that Fu Shen really is crippled, but seeing it with his own eyes, there was no room for disbelief. With Fu Shen's current appearance, never mind recovering his original condition, it seemed that the ever steadily living on for some years presented a problem. Zhang He's vision darkened. He felt chilled from head to foot. In his sorrow, even the form of address he used changed. Jing Yuan, your injuries, you... Fu Shen heard his voice trail off with a tremor, the rims of his eyes turning red, as if Fu Shen hadn't simply been injured but was about to depart this mortal world the next moment. The corners of Fu Shen's lips twitched irresistibly. With a sigh, he said, Thank you for your solicitude, Commander Zhang. It really is only my legs that are injured. It isn't fatal. Ah, Changshang, go get a handkerchief, help Commander Zhang wipe away those tears. Zhang He had served in the Yuanzhou army in his earlier years and had been acquainted with Fu Tingshang and Fu Tingxian. Really, he was halfway to being Fu Shen's family elder. Unfortunately, since assuming control over the Beiyuan cavalry, Fu Shen had always dawdled in the north, unwilling to return. His exchanges with old friends of his father's generation had declined by degrees. But now, gravely injured, thin and pallid, his appearance made Zhang He all of a sudden put aside his position, and remember only the high-spirited boy who in former years had always trailed after Fu Xing in the army. Further considering that he was alone in the world, with his parents dead and no children to look after him, without even an intimate behind him to assist him with a disability that was unlikely to heal at such a young age, Zhang He felt sadness welling up. It's all because of our incompetence. We couldn't prevent you from going out onto the battlefield back then, which has led to the current disaster. How will I face your father and your uncle in the netherworld? Commander Zhang, Fu Shen, pained, leaned against the carriage wall. Let us not mention events that have already passed. I am well. There is no need for you to be overly grieved. From beginning to end, he had refused to call him uncle. Zhang He was on one hand dejected, and on the other hand felt that Fu Shen really was hard-hearted. It was already late, and Fu Shen's party was in a hurry to enter the capital, so the two of them now bid farewell. The Beiyuan riders changed horses and continued their gallop towards the capital, just barely entering the city before the gates were closed. The last time Fu Shen had come back had been 3 months ago. The capital hadn't changed at all. As before, there were lights, liveliness, and bustle everywhere. The Beiyuan soldiers traveling with him, however, went to the capital very rarely. They were constantly looking around as they walked, their progress slowing bit by bit. The sight of them walking down the street was truly too eye-catching. Fu Shen thought about it, then beckoned Xianxun over and quietly instructed, Take me back to the manor now, then take them out for a stroll. No whoring, no gambling, no making trouble, and record the expenses on my account. Go on. Xianxun opposed this without so much as thinking about it. How could we? Do as I say. Fu Shen's energy seemed to be waning. His voice was very low, but he spoke so insolently that it made one's hand itch to give him a beating. Xianxun Chongshan, if you keep hovering around me, you'll destroy my reputation. If I can't get married, you'll be the one acting the filial son at my bedside in the future. Xian Sun couldn't win against this blackguard general. All he could do was give a sheepish assent. Passing through a small alley, they came to a tidy street. This area was full of the mansions of the Mariotis, and wealthy, all lofty pavilions and vivid cinnabar paint, imposing in bearing, and more tranquil than the houses of ordinary people. The Marquise of Jingning Manor was situated at the northeast corner. The old servant minding the house took down the threshold and welcomed the carriage through the gate. Servants waited in the courtyard. Seeing their master carried out on his subordinate's back, they all kept their hands to themselves and stood hesitating, not daring to step forward. Fu Shen had moved out of the Duke of Ying's manor to live apart as soon as he had been made Marquis. He had no care at all for this big house. The servants were all weak and elderly ones that his stepmother, Madame Qin, had gathered from among her household and sent here for him to use. This had been 4 or 5 years ago. Fu Shen was often away, and there was no affection between him and the servants. Whenever he managed to return home for a brief stay, these people would be like mice seeing a cat, cowering away in the rear kitchen and the servant quarters. Unless it was unavoidable, they wouldn't come out to obstruct his view. Luckily, while the servants feared him, they hadn't neglected the housework. Xian Shun carried Fu Shen to the bedroom on his back, asking the servants for hot water, then took off his outer robe for him and wiped his hands and face clean and helped him lie down in bed. Once he had been sorted out, Fu Shen destroyed the bridge between them, driving Xian Sun away. Get busy. Have them leave a gate open for you tonight. There are side rooms all over the rear courtyard. Sleep wherever you want. Forgive me for being an inattentive host. Seeing an expression of weariness that could hardly be concealed on his face, Xian Sun said nothing further. Oh, hey, Momar's Rover! Welcome back! I'm so glad you could catch a bit of the live, too. I've been wondering about you. I was starting to get a little worried. But welcome back. I hope everything's been well with you. But yeah, we just started. You mostly just got kind of some back history, and our protag, the Marquise, is just now entered the city and his manor, and we're learning about his manor. So you haven't missed a whole lot. He got injured in a rock slide. His legs are pretty damaged, and he's pretending to be sicker than he is right now. And that is basically where we are. It's kind of, there's some power play stuff already happening. But yeah. Seeing an expression of weariness that could hardly be concealed on his face, Xian Sun said nothing further. He tactfully left. Pill from this afternoon had a powerful soporific effect. In order to deal with the crowd at the capital barracks, Fu Shen held out, not sleeping on the road. Now at last he could hold out no longer. Practically as soon as Xian Sun had shut the door and left, he dropped right into a dizzy dream. Also, I know you're super chill. I'm trying with the names, but there's a lot of them. So, it's been interesting. The old servant listened at the window for a while with his ears perked up until he heard long, even breaths coming from inside, at which point, tiptoeing and clinging to the wall, he left the inner courtyard and had the cook prepare some easy-to-digest porridge and snacks, keep them warm on the stove for when their master awoke. Fu Shen had traveled light and entered the capital openly. News quickly reached the palace and the ears of the courtiers. But presently, there shouldn't be anyone coming to pay him a visit, so the old servant, after seeing off Xian Xun and the others, shut the front gate, leaving only a side gate open. But when Fu Shen had been asleep for less than 2 hours, all of a sudden, urgent and forceful knocking came from outside the Marquis of Jingning Manor. The porter didn't dare to slight whoever this was. He hurried inside to report their presence. The old servant, the only one in the house who could make a decision, came in a rush, dragging his not very nimble legs. He looked out and was dumbfounded by the crowd outside. Black-clothed men with swords hanging from their waists astride large horses quaked with terror. Might I be so bold as to ask, gentlemen? The crowd parted automatically, and a tall man came through it, who stopped his horse in the light outside the shadow of the eaves. Instantly, the cloud pattern on his dark blue clothing flashed like flowing water. The celestial horses embroidered in silver on the back of his outer robe fluttered their wings as though ready to take flight. Moonlight and lantern light illuminated a beautiful face with smiling eyes and thin lips. No need to panic, grandfather. He nodded politely in greeting, but his tone and manner were indelibly proud and self-important. The Fei Long Guard's Imperial Investigator Yan Xiaohan, There we go. Yan Xiaohan. There we go. I told you. It's been a struggle. Acting on orders from His Majesty comes on purpose to engage a renowned physician to examine the Marquis of Jingning's injuries. Please go on ahead to announce my arrival. Why do I have a feeling that's going to be the main character? Oh boy, that was a struggle. The old servant couldn't tell apart the colors of official robes, but he had spent decades as a servant in 2 noble residences. He was very familiar with the name Yan Xiaohan. His heart lurched. Stalling, he said, "Well, my master has had a long journey, and he is injured. He is already gone to sleep. Your Honor, why not?" The Fei Long Guard had always been peremptory in action, as was well known to the court and the commons, and rare were those who dared to stand in their way. Yuan Xiaohan gave the servant a lofty glance from on high. The hand holding the reins was pale and gaunt. His sleeve was rolled back, revealing a small length of ice-cold wrought iron wrist guard. With a not-quite smile, he asked, "What? Are you very scared of me seeing your Lord Marquis, grandfather?" He had it right. This was no secret in the capital. Commander of the left Shenwu Corps, the Fei Long Guard's Imperial Investigator Yan Xiaohan. Yes, I got it right. Was the most blazingly authoritative minister the capital had seen in recent years. He was also the court's lackey, whom everyone wished to avoid, the emperor's eyes and ears. Even worse, he and the Marquis of Jingning were naturally opposed. They had been at odds for a very long time, a pair of unshakable sworn enemies. It was said that a fight was sure to break out whenever they met. Not even the emperor could stop them. Just this year, in Morning Court 3 months ago, due to differing views on the court dispatching army observers to all points, they had actually spent an hour deriding each other, without swear words, right in front of all the ministers, and had nearly come to blows then and there. The emperor had been so angry that he had pounded his inkstone and deducted half a year of each of their salaries, then quickly chased Fu Shen back to the northern border before finally letting it go. Fortunes rise and fall. Now Fu Shen had returned to the capital in dejection, while Yan Xiaohan, yes, I got it right. I'm going to be excited about saying this right for a good couple times. I apologize now. Remained high-ranking and powerful. If he should harbor private resentment, how could their lord Marquis take it in his condition? The old servant was anxious. There was terror on his face. I would not dare. It is only that our Lord Marquis really cannot bear any excitement. I hope your honor will make allowances. As he spoke, Yan Xiaohan had surveyed the Marquis of Jinning's manor. The courtyard was tidy and desolate. Signs of the servants' care were apparent, but it still seemed deserted. He gave a veiled sigh. Yielding, he said, I'm not here to make trouble for him. You forget it. No need for you to announce me. I'll just go in and have a look at him. Then go. However persistent the old servant might be, the weak cannot overpower the strong. He had to give way. Hoisting a lantern, he went on ahead as guide. Yan Xiaohan left the Fei Long guards who had accompanied him in the forecourt to avoid giving rise to any misunderstanding with his muster of forces, only bringing with him into the inner courtyard a spare and mild young man with the look of a scholar. The enormous manor was absolutely empty. There were some trees growing in the courtyard. If it wasn't swept for a time, fallen leaves would cover the steps. It was as if the whole capital's bleak autumn mood had fallen in this courtyard. It was dark now. The other courtyards were silent and vacant, completely dark. Only in the windows of the main building did a pale gleam appear, giving it a rather dreary look. Yan Xiaohan could restrain himself, but the young man walking beside him was already shaking his head repeatedly. Quietly, he asked, with the Marquis of Jingning's high birth and great merit, how could his home be? The old servant felt this deeply. He heaved sigh upon sigh. The Lord Marquis is always away defending the border. He doesn't come home for years, and there's no virtuous lady in the house to preside over the housework and manage the household. There's only us old wretches left. We cannot ease the Lord Marquis' burdens. As he chattered on, he reached out to open the door of the main hall for the guests and asked the two of them to come and sit down. He lit all the lamps and ordered tea served. Wait here a moment, gentlemen. I'll go speak to the Lord Marquis. Hardly had he spoken than a dull thud suddenly came from the west inner room, as if something heavy had dropped from a height. The old servant's hand trembled. Before he could react, the Fei Long Guard's imperial investigator, who had been standing beside him, moved like the wind. In a blink of an eye, he was inside the inner room. Yeah, the names in this one are definitely a lot harder than Little Mushroom. I hope I am not massacring them over much, but yeah, it is definitely something. I can hear myself getting nasally. I am enjoying it though. We are definitely still on the here are the characters, here's the setting. It's gonna be very interesting. I sincerely apologize to any native speaker if they happen to listen to this, because I am not a native speaker by any stretch of the imagination. Ah, thank goodness for tea. Okay. Chapter 3. Fu Shen's sleep wasn't very restful. The medicine he had taken had countless side effects. Palpitations, nightmares, shortness of breath, a feeling between sleeping and waking as if a big stone was pressed down on his chest, inability to move, dizziness, and tinnitus. Precisely the symptoms of a ghost pressing on the bed, as spoken of among the common people. While Fu Shen himself hadn't woken up yet, his mind was clear. He silently slowed his breathing, trying to blink. Only when he could control his eyelids again did he press his hands against the bed, planning to sit up. But he had forgotten that his legs were still paralyzed, utterly without sensation from the knee down. His arms and abdomen exerted force simultaneously, but because the strength he used was too great, his center of gravity was unsteady. He turned over and fell off the bed with a thump. The bed in the bedroom wasn't particularly tall, but there had been a footstool next to it. Ooh. When Fu Shen fell, he first knocked against the footstool with his abdomen, then fell face up on the ice-cold tiles. Back of his head made a dull thud, hitting hard enough to make his vision darken and his ears buzz incessantly. This guy just can't catch a break. But before he could feel the dull ache, the bedroom door was kicked open. Someone charged inside and picked him up in his arms. This person's sleeves were still suffused with the chill of the autumn wind, but his palms were burning hot. Fu Shen was picked up, his head resting against this person's chest, his face pressed against a dark blue brocade official robe. The material felt soft and smooth. From the collar and sleeves came a mild and even agarwood scent. This seemed to be a person very familiar to him, suddenly become strange from too close proximity. His scorching breath soaked through the thin fabric, so hot it made the person's body tense abruptly. Then he was put back on the bed, a slightly rigid hand pressed against his forehead. "Why is your breath so hot? Are you feverish?" His blurred gaze and the pain he felt gradually clarified. Fu Shen recognized him. His first movement was to push that hand away. "What are you doing here?" The old servant and the young Feilong guard bringing up the rear heard this cold and harsh question as soon as they came in, and came to a halt in unison, thinking to themselves that the rumors were indeed substantiated. Neither of these two was easy to deal with. If a fight started, they would first have to hold back Yan Xiaohan. Yan Xiaohan. Yan Xiaohan closed his eyes and breathed. He didn't want to pick a quarrel with Fu Shen. Stiffly, he said, "You're about to be cooked. Get up and drink something. I'll have someone feel your pulse and prescribe additional medicine." Fu Shen, eyes closed, listlessly responded, "No need to take the trouble. Let's move on to business. Lord Yan has graced my humble abode in the middle of the night. What did you wish to see me about?" Yan Xiaohan ignored him. Without leave, he went to the table, picked up a tea kettle, and poured half a cup of completely cold tea. His expression immediately turned grim. He glanced coldly at the old servant. "Is this the quality of your service?" Pained, Fu Shen said, "That's enough." Yan Xiaohan said, "The Lord Marquis's body is a precious one. How can he receive such lax treatment from you? If you continue to be this careless, do not blame me for reporting it to His Majesty so he can dispense punishment." Fu Shen's fingers fallen to his side, twitched imperceptibly. How could the old servant endure such a fright? He quickly knelt and begged for mercy. Fu Shen truly couldn't take the disturbance. He yielded at last, saying, "Fine, thank you for disciplining my servant, Lord Yan." These words sounded as though they were mocking him for being a busybody. Yan Xiaohan took this opportunity to disengage. He icily spat out the words, "Bring fresh tea." Then at last magnanimously allowed the servant to leave. These guys are both so sassy. I have a feeling that these are our main characters and that it is going to be a very cat-dog relationship just based on this. Very hot-cold. Only 3 people remained in the room. Yan Xiaohan stood by the bed, head bent to look at Fu Shen. The bedside lamp wasn't bright enough. Half of Fu Shen's face was plunged into shadow, making its outlines appear especially deep and sharp. He was truly skin and bones, and yet, at the same time, also truly unrivaled in loveliness. So lovely it was even a little dazzling. That's not gay at all. Nope. Even skin and bones, he's pretty. Yan Xiaohan smiled. There was very false sincerity in his smile. "The Emperor is thinking of Lord Marquis. His Majesty heard that you had returned to the capital, and particularly ordered me to bring someone here to feel your pulse." Eyes half closed, Fu Shen said weakly, "Pass on my thanks to His Majesty for his care. Go back and report that I am well. I've already been treated by the Bei Yuan Army's military doctor. There is no need to trouble the imperial physicians." The word in the capital was that the Marquis of Jingning was headstrong and self-willed, impervious to persuasion or threats. This was indeed true. Shen Yais, the Fei Long Guard's military doctor, who has accompanied Yan Xiaohan, stepped forward. Out of a physician's kind-heartedness, my book stand was blocking the P. So it looked like a magician's kind-heartedness, but it's actually physician's kind-heartedness. He was planning to counsel this stubborn general on behalf of his superior. But Yao Xiaohan raised a hand to stop him, indicating for him to wait. The expression that inadvertently appeared on his face looked as though he were dealing with some troublesome, ferocious beast. "His Majesty is concerned about the Lord Marquis's injuries. I have come here today to set His Majesty's mind at ease." Yan Xiaohan kept his gaze fixed on Fu Shen's profile, biting off his words crisply and slowly. "To gain the Lord Marquis's trust, this military doctor of the Beiyuan army must have superb medical skills. I have no fear of a misdiagnosis. It is only that the Lord Marquis's injuries are of utmost importance. There isn't any harm in giving some other doctors to have a look, don't you think?" Fu Shen raised his eyelids, meeting his eyes. When Yan Xiaohan met the gaze that was like cold iron, he felt a chill at heart. He suddenly had a strange impression, as though Fu Shen was looking through him, to fix his eyes coldly on another person. After a moment, the impervious Marquis of Jingning lowered his eyelids, casually gathering up his messy hair, and feebly extended a hand, indicating for Yan Xiaohan to help him up. "Since you're already here, then I'll have to trouble you. Go on." Shen Yisei startled, but Yan Xiaohan didn't seem to notice anything amiss. To be able to order the Feilong Guard's imperial investigator around like his own maid, Fu Shen might as well have been the first. Yan Xiaohan helped Fu Shen up and turned to sit at the bedside. Afraid that the headboard would rub against his injuries, he braced an arm behind his back, distantly encircling his shoulders to keep him from sliding down. Precisely because of this movement, Fu Shen's hair fell loose. Yan Xiaohan pulled him close and tucked the strand of hair that had fallen before his eyes behind his ears. Like this, Fu Shen ended up mostly in his arms. Dude, chapter 3 and they already kind of side hug? What is this progression? The Marquise of Jingning, probably thinking that this cushion was softer than the headboard, didn't bother about how repulsive Yan Xiaohan himself was. Spoke too soon. Shifting and wriggling, he found himself a comfortable position and lay still. For a pair of sworn enemies, the posture unavoidably seemed too intimate. Luckily, Shen Yisei's only concern was for Fu Shen's injuries. He didn't notice how the imperial investigator, whose name could make all the officials blanch, considerately pulled up the quilt to bundle the Marquise of Jingning's entirety, while the Marquis of Jingning relaxed his tense back against the quilt and leaned his whole weight on Yan Xiaohan. Fu Shen, in fact, was running a terrible fever, and he had just taken a fall. Everywhere hurt. He wasn't actually such a fragile person, but Yan Xiaohan, having seen his fill of willow branch trembling in the wind officials and nobles, probably taken him for another easily broken vase and was treating him accordingly. The Lord Marquis is injured. Your constitution isn't what it once was. You must take care not to get chilled, and you must not consume cold or otherwise stimulating foods. Your bedroom must be protected against cold and damp. The weather is growing colder. A brazier and scented frame ought to be lit early. Shen Yisei finished taking his pulse, let go of Fu Shen's wrist, and added, "Pardon the offense, Lord Marquis. I need to have a look at your leg injuries." Yan Xiaohan silently lifted the quilt and rolled up his pant legs for him. As he did so, he couldn't avoid touching him. As if he had noticed something, Fu Shen shot him a strange look. He remembered very well that Yan Xiaohan didn't get sick at the sight of blood. Why was he shaking? Though Fu Shen couldn't feel pain now, Shen Yisei was still as gentle as possible. Don't know why I stuttered on that one. That one's pretty self-explanatory. Okay. The external wounds have healed very well. Your fever comes from being affected by the cold. The Lord Marquis' most serious injuries are to the kneecap and veins. It will take several years of slowly building back your strength before there can be some hope of recovery, but I'm afraid in the future you will have some difficulty standing and walking. Yan Xiaohan rolled Fu Shen's pant legs back down for him and bundled him in the quilt. Shen Yisei put away his wrist cushion. I will write out an additional prescription for the Lord Marquis. First, we will treat your cold. As for the wounds to your legs, continue treatment according to the methods of the Beiyuan army doctor. Permit me to consult with the imperial physicians and court physicians when I return, so as to draw on the collective pool of wisdom. Perhaps we will be able to come up with a better method. Fu Shen was nodding, then suddenly sucked in a breath. Gently! Said Shen Yisei. It's nothing. Fu Shen clenched his teeth and flexed his shoulders, which Yan Xiaohan had been gripping hard enough to hurt. He nodded and expressed his thanks. I appreciate you taking the trouble, Mr. Shen. Not at all. Shen Yisei sidestepped with this gratitude. My medicinal skills are inadequate. I was unable to ease the Lord Marquis' burdens. I am truly ashamed. You mustn't be like that, Mr. Shen. Fu Shen was the most carefree one amongst them. I'm well aware of the condition of my injuries. Remains only to do what one can and leave the rest to heaven. Set your mind at ease, Lord Marquis, Yan Shaohan said abruptly. Heaven always leaves a way out. There has to be a way to heal your injuries. Then to Shan Yise he added, Give the prescription to the Marquis' manor servants. Tell them decant the medicine. If they lack any ingredients, they can send someone out to buy them, and if they can't find them, they can come to my manor to get them. Shen Yise saw that the two of them seemed to have something to say to each other, so he saluted Fu Shen and went to follow his lord's orders. Yan Shaohan helped him to lie back down, expression unfathomable. His features were naturally gentle and sincere. Oh, come on. Okay. Nothing in his face showed that he was the one who had just squeezed the firm and unwavering General Fu hard enough to make him yelp. Oops. All right. At last, only the two of them remained in the room. Yan Shaohan pulled over a small, round stool and sat far away from him. Your legs. Didn't we just discuss this? It is what it is. Fu Shen extended a hand and interrupted him. Pour me a cup of tea. Yan Shaohan frowned. It's cold. I'll take it anyway. Or am I supposed to die of thirst? Fu Shen said. Similarly, even with broken legs, I still have to live. Am I going to hang myself over such a thing? Yan Shaohan had no answer to this. All he could do was spill out the half cup of old tea and pour a fresh cup, then pass it to him. His Majesty had his doubts. That is why he deliberately sent me to bring someone to examine your injuries. Then he can set his mind at ease now, said Fu Shen. Not necessarily, Yan Shaohan said bluntly. You're still breathing, aren't you? Fu Shen looked at him with a you're goading me again expression. I keep thinking that none of this is real. Do you really not have some backup plan? Yan Shaohan asked. You didn't release false information? Fu Shen asked in turn. Why would you think that? Yan Shaohan candidly answered. Because you have a clever face. You don't look like you would do such a stupid thing. That's true. Fu Shen shook his head and drank the tea unhurriedly. The spear in the open is easily dodged. The hidden arrow is hard to avoid. If you think I can't be taken in, then you must consider me much too miraculous. Yan Shaohan hadn't expected his self-assessment to be so low. He was momentarily startled. Serving in the army since his youth, accomplishing a series of illustrious military exploits, Fu Shen's existence seemed to be of the purpose of smashing the concept of impossible. In the hearts of many, the Marquis of Jingning and the Beiyun cavalry were already an unbeatable legend. This vision struck too deep a chord in the heart. Even Yan Shaohan himself had such an illusion. But Fu Shen was only an ordinary man. He didn't have 3 heads and 6 arms, copper skin and iron bones. A flesh and blood body couldn't resist a boulder falling out of the sky. Do you know, on the road back to the capital, I talked to some people in a tea kiosk. I heard them say that there's a ballad going around in the city capital called With Commander Fu in the north, the capital can sleep easy. Fu Shen said. It's ridiculous. I've spent 7 or 8 years at the northern border. I thought I had a distinguished career, protecting the border and bringing peace to the people. I was so arrogant, I was about to forget my own name. Only at the end did I learn that it wasn't only the Tartar and the Z who had been losing sleep because of me. Even that gentleman couldn't sleep easy because of the trouble I've been making. Yan Xiaohan said, "Since you understand it all now, then why not simply surrender your authority, quietly go home to retire and farm? Isn't being an idle nobleman far better than going into battle or intriguing in the capital?" "That's just about enough now," Fu Shen sneered. "Is this your first day knowing me? I thought that at any rate we had exchanged our inner thoughts despite being little acquainted. Yet you're trying this ploy on me?" He quietly continued. "The Eastern Tartars won't give up their designs. The Ji clan watches us covetously, and how many people at court have had their vision obscured by years of peace? If I go now, who will come to take over the Beiyuan cavalry? Who will be willing to haggle with the court for the sake of the border army? When the enemy is at the gate, won't that misfortune fall on the common soldiers, the innocent people? What has this got to do with you?" Oh, that's very dark. Hang on. Oh, let me see. Trying to do different colors for different books, and it's very interesting. Fu Shen abruptly raised his eyes. He seemed not to have expected Yan Xiaohan to turn hostile this fast. Yan Xiaohan coldly said, "His Majesty fears you. The ministers suspect you. The ignorant masses only follow the trend. Now that you're like this, who still thinks of you? You yourself hardly have a place to shelter, yet you still have room in your heart to embrace the nation. Don't you think that's ridiculous, General Fu?" The words were cold and heartless, profoundly offensive, but contrary to Yan Xiaohan's expectations, Fu Shen didn't retort. Yan Xiaohan watched his profile, eyes cast down in deepened thought, and suddenly had a distinct realization that the youthful brashness, the keen and dazzling edge that had once been Fu Shen's, were now continuously growing faint. Pain, hardship, and experience, or something else, were thoroughly, utterly wearing them down. There was a distance between them, but their manners were much more open than before, nearly amounting to laying one's heart bare. The two of them, in fact, did not get along, but they were far from being unable to stand each other, as the rumors in the outside would have had it. They had met as teenagers, and being so-called sworn enemies, it was only them going with the flow of a misunderstanding. After all, one was a powerful official holding military authority, and one was a highly trusted aide of the emperor. If they got on too well, it would have made people suspicious. The play-acting of a tacit understanding and the intimate exchanges amid their slight acquaintance admittedly did away with quite a bit of trouble. Yet this has also metamorphosed certain disagreements into chasms that lay between the two of them. Many successive generations of the Fu family had been noble and meritorious. The men of Fu Shen's fathers and grandfathers' generation had all died on the battlefield. Duty and loyalty were practically his nature, carved into his bones and blood. Yan Xiaohan, meanwhile, was of humble birth and had stepped on countless people to climb to his current position. He obeyed only the emperor's word, disregarding principle, had no bottom line. He absolutely could not comprehend these men of integrity who would undertake a career where they were sure to lose, would even practically rush to lay themselves down. In the end, they weren't traveling the same path. The two of them had perhaps long anticipated this. But they hadn't thought the clash would come so suddenly, nor that such a high price would have to be paid. Alright, we are at chapter 4, but my throat is killing me, so I need a break. I am still planning to read through chapter 8. All right. Actually, I'm going to blow my nose because... One of these days, I'm going to just bring, or maybe even purchase, my own electronic kettle, and we'll just make tea in between. All right, chapter 4. The Duke of Ying Manor. The autumn day was cool, but inside it was warm and cozy. The long couch was by the window. On a small table, all types of pastries and fresh fruit were laid. A half-grown boy, with one leg crossed over the other, had his head down, pretending to read the volume in his hands. He hadn't turned a page in ages. The level below was full of standing maids, who occasionally exchanged looks or pouted, or made veiled hand signals, their faces expressive. They were at no point well behaved. Teenage boy had just been stirred to action by these coquettish gestures when a young maid suddenly ran in from outside and crisply said, "Madam is coming." Everyone's expression turned grave. All the maids obediently stood still. The teenager's legs stopped twitching and his bones were no longer soft. Ah! No. Okay. There you go. I am having issues with this stand tonight. Holding the book in both hands, he swiftly twisted into an appearance of propriety. By the time the splendidly dressed lady came in, what she saw was a classic portrait of a student hard at his studies. Madam Kin, leaning on the arm of a maid, sat down on the couch. The teenager stood up to salute her and warmly called out, "Mother," then sat next to her. Madam Kin took his hand and said with displeasure, "It's dark. Why haven't the lamps been lit? Take care not to damage your eyes." Hearing this, the maids immediately lit the lanterns and brought fresh tea. The teenager carelessly fabricated, "I was so focused on reading that I didn't notice it. Mother, what brings you here?" Madam Kin said, "I went to the forecourt to see your third uncle and discuss some things, and on the way back I was passed by here, and so I came to have a look at you. Will save you a trip to see me this evening." The teenager's eyes turned. "Is it concerning my big brother?" Madam Kin looked askance at him. "Clever, aren't you? You never focus on your studies. All you do is pick up gossip. It's all over the capital. Is there any need for me to go deliberately picking it up?" The teenager sneered. "He got his legs broken and couldn't stick it out at the border, so he had to come back to the capital to retire, right? Says the boy who's never been to war. Them be some big words, baby boy." Hearing this, Madam Kin pursed her lips and pressed her hand heavily, but she didn't reproach him, only instructed the servants attending on them. "Withdraw, all of you. I need to talk to Yanner alone." The servants all bowed and left the room. 2 upper maids remained in the corridor, while the rest went into the courtyard to amuse themselves. All the maids who looked after the young master were pampered, pretty, and pleasant. Quite a few among them were naive and simple-minded women with chivalry in their hearts. 2 who were on good terms got together to whisper to each other. When they came to what they had heard in the young master's room, one of them indignantly said, "It's no wonder the first gentleman wants to live outside. If he was at home, who knows what state the lady would torment him into." The other one said with a smile, "Not necessarily. You wouldn't know it. When he was at home, whenever our madam and the young master saw him, they were like mice who had seen a cat. He looks like a promising young man, all orchids and jade trees, but his temper is like a tempest. Now that's a real man who can hold up heaven and earth. The first gentleman is a young hero, but he can't even be mentioned in his own home. Our young master has no conscience. He distances himself from his own big brother, only listens to the insinuations of those malicious little people. The other maid lightly smacked her on the back of the hand. What do you know? They don't have the same mother. How can he count as his own big brother? Reasonably speaking, only the second young mistress, that Princess Kinau, can call him her big brother. As for our young master and the crown prince's first consort, in his heart they're 3,000 li behind his cousins. That's kind of cool. His sister's now a princess. The late Duke of Yingfu Tongshang's first wife had died young, leaving behind one son, Fu Shen, and one daughter, Fu Ling. At 17, Fu Ling had married the emperor's son, Prince Qi, becoming his first wife. The duke's second wife, Madame Qin, had 2 daughters and 1 son. Her eldest daughter, Fu Ting, had gone into the palace and been selected as the crown prince's consort. Her young son, Fu Ya, and her youngest daughter, Fu Zi, were of still tender years and were both at home being raised by their mother. Wait. I mean, they could still be young, but I was like, I think that Fu Tingshang's, I was like, didn't he die 8 years ago? It's like, I guess, yeah, they could have been born not too long before he died. Still in tender years, were both at home being raised by their mother. When Madame Qin had married in, Fu Shen had already been old enough to understand things. He hadn't been close to her. After Fu Ya was born, the two of them had become even more estranged. They were limited by their position. It was hard to avoid a conflict between a stepmother and the eldest son of the first wife. After all, with Fu Shen ahead of him, the title wouldn't go to Fu Ya in the future. But before Madame Qin could carry out any little tricks, Fu Tingshang had been assassinated at the northern frontier. That time, in order to win over officials of outstanding merit, Emperor Yuan Tai had been treating military officers quite preferentially, so he had decided not to pass on the rank to the next generation, making an exception to decree that Fu Tingxian would inherit the title of Duke of Ying. Later, Fu Tingxian passed away. The military situation at the border was critical. Fu Shen rushed out onto the battlefield before the mourning period had passed. The title of Duke of Ying remained vacant. The Ministry of Rights, in accordance with Emperor Yuan Tian's hints, had let the third master, Fu Tingyi, inherit the position. When Fu Shen returned to court after winning merit, he had instead been made Marquis of Jingning. Using this as a pretext, Madame Qin, citing the fact that there were now 2 titles in the family and a tall tree catches the wind, had made the suggestion that Fu Shen should live apart. Fu Shen knew what she was planning. She was simply after the position and wanted to elbow him out. Madame Qin was short-sighted, but the new Duke of Ying, Fu Tingyi, thought further ahead. The Fu family's true asset wasn't the title of Duke, but the Beiyuan cavalry. But 3 generations of the Fu family had had a close connection to the Beiyuan army. If this went on, the Beiyuan army would sooner or later change its name to the Fu family corps. What would the people of the empire think of that, and what would the one sitting on the throne think of it? Well, we're finding out now, aren't we? So it was better to fall back in order to advance. In the future, Fu Shen would inevitably hold the Beiyuan cavalry firmly in his hand, while the Duke of Ying Manor, or rather, the Colossus of the Fu family, could no longer be tied to the Beiyuan army. After weighing up the relative merits, the present situation had come about. The Beiyuan army commander, the Marquis of Jingning Fu Shen, had set up housekeeping on his own, to practically no contact with the Duke of Ying Manor. The Fu family's third master, Fu Tingyi, had inherited the title and was acting the idle noble, while Madame Qin lived at the ducal manor with her children, only waiting for Fu Ya to come of age to request that he be made heir to the title. Neither mother nor son had any fond feelings towards Fu Shen. For Madame Qin, it was because of her guilty conscience. She couldn't stand to see him succeed, lest he turn around and bite back at her. Fu Ya probably thought that since Fu Shen hadn't offered up the position of heir to him with both hands on his knees, that meant he naturally owed him. What a prick. Inside the principal room, Madame Qin put on a stern expression and chided, "That mouth of yours. It's one thing to talk at home, but when you're outside you must on no account carelessly wag your tongue." "Mother," Fu Ya tossed a fruit into his mouth. Drawling, he said discontentedly, "He's already left the Fu family. Why should I be afraid of him?" "What do you know? You're talking drivel anyway." Madame Qin lightly slapped his leg. "His parents' memorial tablets are both here. He's only living apart. How can he not be a member of the Fu family anymore? After all, he is your older brother, and he has occupied a high position from a young age. Well, his temper has been somewhat restrained in recent years. In earlier years, he was an unforgiving fiend. Be cautious. Don't fall prey to him." Fu Ya snorted indifferently. Madame Qin said, "In a few years, we'll be asking for you to be made the heir. Your third uncle favors Fu Shen. He's just waiting for you to slip up. You must not put a step out of place now. Have you got that?" She lowered her voice. "Put up with it for now, my son. One day the title of Duke and all the family property will be yours. No one will be able to fight you for it, not even Fu Shen. He will only be able to stand by and watch." Madame Qin's voice was almost low enough to be a whisper. Fu Ya's heart jumped. He raised his head. Mother has a way." Madame Qin tightly squeezed his hand. "Set your mind at ease." I really, really, really hope both of them fall on their asses and fail. This is me personally. Just like, yeah. The Eastern Palace. The Crown Princess, Lady Sen, faced a bronze mirror as she removed her hairpins and earrings. The attending maid combing her hair bent down and quietly said into her ear, "My lady, the Duke of Ying Manor's Madame Qin sent a servant today to pay respects to First Consort Fu. They sat together in her hall and talked for a long time." The Crown Princess's hand paused. She thought briefly, then understood. Smiling, she said, "As she likes. I've heard that the Marquis of Jingning has returned to the capital. Madame Qin must be feeling rather uncomfortable, so she's in a hurry to ingratiate herself with our prince." The maid was a close confidant who had accompanied her as part of her dowry. Hearing this, she said uncomprehendingly, "But isn't the Marquis of Jingning? He's crippled, but he has yet to fall," Lady Sen said. "The Marquis of Jingning is famous among the people, and his prestige at court is extremely high. He also holds the military authority of the northern frontier. Even if he hands it over, the Beiyuan army will be full of his former direct subordinates. He will still be able to summon hundreds with one cry. to be disrespectful. Never mind, Madam Kin. Even our prince must give way to him somewhat. The crown princess, Lady Sun's father, was the military commissioner of Jingchu, Sun Hongfang. There was some friendship between him and the Duke of Ying Manor. Lady Sen had been picking up subtle influences from him since she was little. Her ability to read a situation was no less than a man's. Had Fu Shen not gone to the northern frontier, perhaps he could have been among the candidates to become Sen Hongfang's son-in-law. Dismissing the topic of temperament, the Marquis of Jingning's conduct was extremely upright, and he was young and a war hero, covered in military honors, enchanting to countless young mistresses waiting to be betrothed. I remember the first consort, Fu, had a little brother, said Lady Sen. They were going to request that he be made the Duke of Ying's heir in a couple years. Yes, my lady. Our prince originally had his eye on the Marquis of Jingning's full-blooded younger sister, the current Princess Qi, and sent someone to consult the Fu family's view in private. At that time, Second Master Fu was still head of the household at the Duke of Ying Manor. Because this was his elder niece, he couldn't very well make an arbitrary decision himself. He went to ask the Marquis of Jinning about it. She slowly recalled the rumors in the capital at the time. She stroked her temples. All of a sudden, a faint, especially causeless grief welled up in her heart. The Marquis of Jinning was about the same age First Consort Fu's little brother is now. When he heard that his sister was unwilling, he refused the marriage without another word. They're all that resolute in the Fu family. Even if it meant offending His Highness, he still wanted to find his sister a marriage to her satisfaction. Princess Qi Fu Ling had such a good big brother. It really did make a person envious. For the sake of the position of heir, Madame Qin abandoned all face. She sent her daughter into the palace and split up her family, made an unsightly ruckus. And what came of it? The Marquis of Jinning's sister is the grand and glorious Princess Qi, while Madame Qin has to rely on First Consort Fu when she needs anything, and rack her brains keep clear of me like a thief. Sneering, Lady Sen continued. If her son had half the Marquis of Jinning's willingness to take on responsibility, First Consort Fu would have never ended up submitting in humiliation at my hands, cowering and fawning. The maid knew that the words Marquis of Jinning had touched a remote regret in the Crown Princesses, and felt that the Crown Princess was unusually acerbic tonight. She gave a firm assent. Well, my lady, should we distance her from His Highness for the next few days? Lady Sen looked into the bronze mirror briefly, muttering to herself. A long moment later, she waved a hand and said, No need. None of them are worth their salt anyway. Even if His Highness shows them favor, it will all go to waste. Night inside Eastern Palace's Chunfang Pavilion. The Crown Prince, Sun Yun Liang, was for once staying the night. First Consort Fu came forward to help him remove his outer robe and attend on the Crown Prince as he cleaned himself up. Though she was as solicitous as usual, there was a persistent gloom between her brows. To Sun Yun Liang's eyes, the sorrowing beauty with her shapely brows slightly knit had a particular romantic air to her. He couldn't resist coming over to embrace her and provide his attentions. When the cloud had cleared and the rain had ceased, he languorously asked, What is it? What troublesome matter has you so worried? Fu Ting quickly stood and knelt by the bed to ask forgiveness. Today my mother sent a servant to tell me about a certain matter. I was scared out of my wits. Because of this, I've been a little distracted. I beg your highness's forgiveness." The crown prince pulled her back into his arms. "I pardon you. What is this matter? Tell me about it." Fu Ting's brow instantly cleared. It was as if she had beheld a savior. Her eyes were full of reverence and trust, making the crown prince feel even more complacent. She drew close to the crown prince's ear, her breath delicate as an orchid scent. "I won't conceal it from you, your highness. This matter concerns my older brother, the Marquis of Jinning Fushen." Oh, and that apparently was the chapter. All right. All right. So we got some people plotting in the background. Chapter 5. This year, it seemed, was destined to be turbulent. Near the end of the year, following the major case of the attack on the Eastern Tartar diplomatic mission that had shaken the court and the commons, yet another rumor concerning the Beiyuan commander spread among the high officials and nobles in the city like a single flame growing into a prairie fire. The Marquis of Jinning Fushen had the Longyang proclivity, which it has an asterisk. He had peach-parting cut-sleeve tendencies. The emergence of this news was odd, but thinking about it carefully, there was much in it to be considered. Moreover, people were never afraid of using the most obscene conjectures to supplement the truth. Truth. In quotations. It wasn't long before vivid accounts of Fushen's love affairs since he had joined the army spread widely through the homes of the nobles and admirable subjects, each becoming a topic, or even becoming a topic of idle chatter at some people's tea and dinner tables. In Great Shao, preferring men wasn't especially far out of bounds, and the people of the times were unusually tolerant of it. But for such a thing to manifest in a general holding military authority was no longer as simple as a mere hobby. The previous dynasty's dynamic name had been Yue. Instead, it had reigned for over a century, producing during that time a romantic emperor who had gone down in history. His posthumous title was Suzong. Before ascending to the throne, Suzong had favored a beautiful woman with the surname Han. After ascending to the throne, he had not only made Lady Han his imperial consort, he had also ennobled her father and all her brothers. Imperial consort Han's little brother was named Han Kang. History recorded that he had been pretty and graceful, with a face like a beautiful woman's, with a character like bright pearls and fine jade. Because of his big sister, Hong Chang joined the Luanyi Guard once, while escorting the emperor's carriage during an outing. He appeared before the emperor. Suzong fell in love with him at first sight. After returning to the palace, he could not forget him. In despite of social conventions and tradition, he had brought Hong Chang into the palace. Forget merely granting him imperial favor. He created a special title outside the ranks of consorts and concubines, imperial companion, equal in consequence to the imperial consort, making the sister and brother both attend upon the same man. The great Yue dynasty had no precedent for any such thing. From the court to the common people, no one was unshaken. Civil and military officials strenuously admonished him to no end, only wishing to line up to strike their heads to death on the floor before the imperial hall. While Suzong was a romantic leaving aside the identifier, first and foremost, he was an emperor, the head of a nation, could not permit himself to become the target of a crowd of officials' fatheads ridicule over a small personal matter. In his anger, this rather crafty emperor issued a decree permitting high-ranking scholar officials to take male concubines, while officials of the sixth rank and above, as well as nobles and imperial kinsmen, could marry male wives equal to first wives. When a superior develops a hobby, his subordinates must develop a passion. Once this exception had been made, while those waiting to see what would happen made up the majority of the court, many scholars extolled being a cut-sleeve as a matter of refinement, so the common people followed suit in droves. From then on, relationships between men flourished unceasingly. Suzong reigned for nearly 30 years, and none of the ministers dared to present a memorial to the throne requesting that this decree be rescinded. It was only when the previous dynasty was in an increasingly rapid decline that the then reigning Xuanzang, feeling that the prevalence of relationships between men ran counter to heavenly principles and tradition, resulting in a stagnating population, sharp drop in the number of strong workers, difficulty in sowing and reaping, at last issued a decree prohibiting marriages between common men. An imperial order sent male concubines back to their homes, returned their indentures to them, and re-enrolled them in the household register. But there were still exceptions to the decree. Xuanzang not only permitted men who had the status of first wife to remain in their husband's family, he deliberately issued a benevolent decree. All officials of the sixth rank or above, dukes and marquises and imperial kinsmen, if they were willing to marry a man as their first wife, were permitted to submit a memorial to the throne for a special dispensation granting their marriage. This benevolent decree became Xuanzang's secret weapon to check powerful ministers and his own family members. For nobles inheriting a title especially, taking a man to wife meant having no direct descendants. If there was no one to inherit the title at their death, it would revert to the court. Following the end of the Yue dynasty, owing to the outstanding efficacy of this bloodless killing blade, it had continued in use to this day. And since Great Zhao had been established, after a dozen courtiers had had marriages granted to them by the emperor, all people with great authority and vast influence. The Beiyuan army's commander, the Marquis of Jinning, the eldest son of the Duke of Ying by his former wife, under any guise, what he would fear most was being smeared with the word cut sleeve. So many people had their gaze fixed menacingly on him, and the emperor was fretting about having no excuse to take over the military power he held. Why, precisely this critical moment, would this rumor spread? Oh, I wonder. Dun, dun, dun. Fu Shen was living quietly at home, paying no visits to family or old friends. Naturally, he had no way of knowing about these rumors. His subordinates, meanwhile, due to having heard too much unreliable gossip about the Marquis of Jinning from extravagant establishments to monstrous tales, had long ago learned to take rumors in stride. Had they any political acuteness, none of them would have allowed the rumors to spread rapidly like this. The plotters were sharpening their knives, while the one at the center of the plot had his eyes and ears closed, utterly ignorant. By the time Yan Xiaohan, who was slightly more alert, heard this rumor from the mouth of a Feilong guard, his heart instantly jumped. His intuition told him this was going to be bad. That night, he received no answer from Fu Shen. Under the circumstances, the most resolute of people couldn't help wavering. Yan Shaohan had the upper hand, but sadly, he wasn't at all pleased. Emperor Yuan Tai hadn't permitted the Feilong Guard to take over the case of the attack on the Eastern Tartar diplomatic mission. All Yan Shaohan could do was choose to investigate in private. The doubts in his heart hadn't disappeared. Though Fu Shen had said it was Yao Shaohan having too high an opinion of him, a person who could leave a battlefield in one piece, falling into an ambush like this was like a duck inexplicably drowning to death in a bucket of water. Never mind that this ambush was full of peculiarities. Even with the Feilong Guard's methods, he had to this day been unable to discover the mastermind. Fu Shen's attitude had made him suspect that there was perhaps some secret behind this case, and Yao Shaohan needed the truth behind it. It had nothing to do with fairness, and it wasn't for the sake of morality. It was because he wielded a monstrous knife of unparalleled sharpness on behalf of the Emperor. He wanted to get a clear look at the turbulent currents hidden beneath the surface, so he could control where that blade struck, rather than have it backlash against him, or be sucked in by the hidden current. Past emperors of the present dynasty had attached great importance to the Imperial Guard. Within the Imperial City were the left and right Jinwu, Luan Yi, Zhu Men, Jiao Qi, and Bao Tao guards, 10 in all, known as the 10 South Yamen Guards. Within the palace were the left and right Yulin, Shen Shu, and Shen Wu Corps, 6 in all, dedicated bodyguards known as the 6 North Yamen Corps. Outside of these, the Feilong Guard supervised the officials and patrolled the borders. Its commanding officer was an upper third-rank imperial investigator, with standing to present memorials in secret in His Majesty's presence. The commander of each corps of the North Yemen was part of the Feilong Guard, and Yan Shaohan held the position of imperial investigator above all the commanders. In terms of real authority, he was the leader of the North Yemen Imperial Guard. The one who had brought the rumor that the Marquis of Jinning is a cutsleeve into the Imperial Guard was the commander of the left Shenshu Corps, Wei Zhu Shao. The Wei family was numerous, with many marriage alliances. They could find relations among the greater part of the nobles in the capital. General Wei was even more richly endowed by nature. There wasn't another man in the Imperial Guard to rival him in enthusiasm for acting as matchmaker or passing along gossip. It was well known among the Feilong Guard as well that Yan Shaohan and Fu Shen didn't get along. Taking pleasure in another's misfortune, Wei Zhu said, "The rumor is too nauseating. Look at how lofty and virtuous the Marquis of Jinning is normally. Here, I was thinking he would only have his own hand for company for the rest of his life. Ha 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 ha." Yan Shaohan's brow furrowed deeply. "Where did you hear that?" General Wei said, "My second uncle's wife's younger sister's husband's cousin. The Marquis of Luen's wife, that is. He had an unwedded daughter and took a fancy to the Marquis of Jinning, so he asked around in private. That's when he learned that there was such a secret." Yan Shaohan put a hand to his forehead. He had no desire to speak to him. That is a ridiculous connection right there. Let's see. My second uncle's wife's younger sister's husband's cousin. That's like a joke right there. It is a joke. Yan Shaohan put a hand to his forehead. He had no desire to speak to him. "Your Honor, Wei Zhu Zhao said curiously, circling him twice. It's the Marquis of Jingning who has such a hobby, and he isn't fretting. So why are you fretting on his behalf? Fishy. Too fishy. A man who hadn't had an unlucky turn in several years was suddenly so unfortunate that he could get something stuck in his teeth while drinking cold water. What had Fu Shen done to enrage man in heaven that demons of all descriptions were bringing out their numerous methods to scheme against him like a swarm of bees? Something's off about this. Wei Xiang, please go investigate where this information about the Marquis of Jingning being cut sleeve came from. Before Yu Xiaohan could finish speaking, a blue-clothed youth eunuch suddenly came into the outer hall. This was the disciple of eunuch Tian, the eunuch who took notes during audiences with His Majesty. The two of them quickly cut their conversation short and stepped forward to receive instructions. The young eunuch said, His Majesty summons Lord Yan to present himself at Yangshan Hall. Hearing that he had business, Wei Zhuzhao was about to step aside conscientiously, but Yan Xiaohan motioned to him behind his back as he said, Wait a moment, eunuch. I have some official business to discuss with General Wei. The young eunuch said unfeelingly, These are His Majesty's verbal instructions. Lord Yan, are you really going to make His Majesty wait for you? Trace of a fleeting smile appeared at the corners of Yan Xiaohan's lips, his most common expression, which was gentle, but also made him look as though he were about to eat someone. I am the Imperial Investigator of the Feilong Guard. Each and every one of my actions serve the Emperor. What you've said puts me in a difficult spot, eunuch. The eunuch had only been blustering. When Yao Xiaohan smiled at him like this, he instantly recalled the frightening legends in the palace concerning this imperial investigator of the Feilong Guard. His expression changed dramatically. He barely managed to keep calm. Giving way, he said, That being the case, do as you wish, Lord Yan. The bewildered General Wei was pulled in front of the writing desk. Yan Xiaohan casually picked up some files for verisimilitude. Lowering his voice, he said, Go to the Marquis of Jinning Manor for me. Tell him the news from outside. Tell Fu Shen that he must be careful and make his preparations soon. No matter what happens, he has to hold steady. He must not act blindly without thinking. This raised a flame in Wei Zhuzhao's gossip-loving heart, but seeing that Yan Xiaohan's expression was solemn, he didn't seem to be joking. He quickly nodded and then said, Set your mind at ease, Your Honor. Just leave it to me. However confidently he spoke, Yan Xiaohan ultimately couldn't keep the eunuch delivering the decree waiting too long. He had to temporarily put this mess aside and hasten to Yangshan Hall. The note-taking eunuch, Tian Tong, had never gotten along with the Feilong Guard. The young eunuch shared in his teacher's enmity. He was unwilling to reveal anything. Only when Yan Xiaohan entered Yangjian Hall did he find that in addition to Emperor Yuantai, the Crown Prince Sun Yuanliang was also in the hall. This humble servant pays respects to His Majesty, pays respects to His Highness the Crown Prince. Arise. Emperor Yuantai was tall, his features dignified. His face had a slight, plump, slack appearance. There were 2 deep folds beside his nose. His lips were slightly thin, and his was a stern, domineering, fickle appearance. This emperor was worthy of being called able and efficient. He had always been of serious disposition, quite solemn, but presently he seemed to be in a good mood. There was even a smile on his face, wiping away the anger and gloom previously brought on by the case of the diplomatic mission, making him actually seem far more kindly. It seemed that this wasn't a bad thing. Yan Xiaohan felt slightly relieved, thinking to himself that he really was in a fright after the tricks and tactics coming one after another in recent days. He was a little jumpy. The crown prince wore a long face and stood by unmoved. Yan Xiaohan could feel his gaze on him. It wasn't malicious, but contained a fine needle-like probing. The crown prince may return to the Eastern Palace. Emperor Yun Tai wished to speak to Yan Xiaohan alone. He considered, then for once gave the crown prince a word of encouragement. In today's matter, you have done well. Receiving the praise, the crown prince had already attained his primary goal for the day. He had no further hesitation about giving up his position. He averted his gaze from Yan Xiaohan, even smiled at him. He bowed and withdrew. That smile seemed to contain indescribable mockery and pity. Yan Xiaohan suddenly had an ominous premonition. Oh, so for some reason, the Long Yang, which was like pages ago, now here is the definition at the bottom of this page, which, I mean, we figured it meant being gay, but it's Long Yang, a colloquial term for male homosexuality. So it was very heavily implied in the term, so it was a little obvious. And we are at chapter 6. Okay, got to blow my nose, and we will take a drink, and then we will continue. Yeah. So, I think we still have 3 chapters. We'll see. Alright, chapter 6. Well, Lord Yan, doomed to worry and work hard, was suffering his fill of torment at the palace. The same Marquis of Jinning that he was concerned about was surrounded by chaos. Fu Shen's traveling party had only settled down a few days ago. His full-blooded little sister, Princess Qi Fu Ling, had sent a servant to pay her respects and deliver some items, as well as to convey that she would be coming in person to visit him another day. Fu Shen truly had no strength to deal with her, and scrupled on account of the Marquis's manor not actually being the home of her parents. Worried that Prince Qi would be touchy, he refused on the spot. No need for that, just tell her to look after herself. The person who had come from the Prince Qi's manor was a servant who had come with Fu Ling from the Duke of Yang manor when she was married. He knew their uncompromising eldest young master's temperament well. He didn't dare to say half a word in protest, only went back to convey his response directly to Fu Ling. When the response was delivered, Prince Qi Sun Yuan Duan happened to be present as well. Hearing this, he couldn't resist shaking his head. Well, Marquis Fu means well. He is being somewhat unreasonable. Since learning that Fu Shen had been injured, Fu Ling had been so worried that she hadn't slept for many nights. She had furtively cried in private several times. Now, hearing that familiar insensitive diction, for some reason she actually inexplicably calmed down. She clenched her teeth and held back her tears, saying, "What an embarrassment in front of your highness. My older brother is stubborn as a mule. He's always been like this." Sun Yun Duan and the princess had been married since they were teenagers. They were on excellent terms. He couldn't resist cracking a joke. "Now you dare to criticize him behind his back?" Fu Ling blushed. "Your highness is making fun of me again. Daji is cold on the outside, but warm on the inside. He just never has any mercy when he speaks. Don't know what kind of sister-in-law would suit him in the future." Prince Qi remembered the rumors his subordinates had reported and deliberately changed the subject. "Who can predict how a marriage will work out? Marquise Fu has just returned to the capital. The Marquise Manor must be extremely busy from top to bottom. It would be unsuitable for you to go now." He took Fu Ling's hand and shook it gently. "Wait another couple of days until he's settled in, then go pay him a visit. How about that?" Fu Ling's eyes lit up. "Your highness will permit me to leave the manor?" Prince Qi turned his head and kissed her cheek. With a quiet laugh, he said, "He's your big brother, not an outsider. There's no harm in it. Only you must promise me to look after your health and your condition. You must not be rash." "Ooh, I think she's pregnant. I think she's pregnant." A faint flush instantly came over Fu Ling's face, making her countenance look even more brilliant. So bright and beautiful she shone. She snuggled into Prince Qi's arms and quietly said, "I understand." "Yeah, she's pregnant. I hope it goes well." The weather was gloomy today, the wind cooler than before. It seemed as if it was about to rain. Fu Shen feared this type of weather most. His old wounds ached incessantly, vexing him. He was about to call someone to push him into the study so he could find some leisure reading or distract himself with something to distract him with, when a servant came to report that Princess Qi had come in person to pay a visit. Her carriage was already at the gate. Fu Shen's head instantly began to hurt. That nuisance. "Help me up. Uncle Fu, tell Zhao Sun and the bodyguards to keep away and keep the people in the rear courtyard under control so there isn't a clash. Ask the princess to come into the main hall. Get 2 boys to wait on her. I'll go over as soon as I'm changed." In the main hall, Fu Ling was in no mood to examine this unfamiliar domicile. She was so nervous she kept wringing her handkerchief. Shortly, the rumble of a wooden wheelchair rolling over the ground came from further in. As if she had been scalded, she forgot herself and leapt out of her chair. She turned her head just in time to meet the eyes of Fu Shen, sitting in the wheelchair. Fu Shen had perhaps not readied himself either. He was visibly startled. Fu Ling stared at him blankly, as if she had suddenly forgotten how to speak. The older brother in her memories, who could hold up the heaven and earth and conquer all obstacles, seemed to have been broken, huddled pathetically in a crude bamboo wheelchair, his features unusually sharp due to excessive emaciation. But the corner of his eyes curved gently as he gave her a somewhat unpracticed smile. Fu Ling couldn't hold back anymore. Agitated, she threw herself towards him, giving a wail, and burst into tears. The old maid who had accompanied her was nearly scared out of her mind. Fu Shen was pushed back by the force, but utterly steady, he pulled her into his arms. "Oh, my goodness, go easy. Little lady, do you think you are still 7 years old?" Her taut heartstrings at last gave out altogether. Princess Key forgot decorum and restraint, clutched his sleeve tightly, and sobbed so hard she could hardly speak. Babbling, she could only keep repeating, "I only have one big brother." Fu Shen's breath caught. The knot of ice at the bottom of his heart was melted by her scalding tears, turning into a pool of warm water. Over the years, the two of them had been separated, one far away at the northern frontier, the other living in the depths of the prince's manor. Even the memory of their last meeting was vague. But the affection between blood relatives had never faded. He gently patted Fu Ling's back. The awkwardness of caution in his movements and quietly comforted her. "Don't cry, don't cry. It's all right. Gaga is here. Don't be sad." Supposing General Fu really was a star of command come to Earth, then Princess Key must have been a god of rain reincarnated. That's pretty funny. The Marquise of Jinning Manor was nearly swept away by tears. Fu Shen managed with difficulty to console his little sister. Physically and emotionally exhausted, he pressed on his temples and said helplessly, "I told you not to come. You didn't listen and just had to come here to cry. Aren't you worried it'll injure your health? After your visit, we won't have to water the manor's garden for 3 years." Fu Ling was using hot water to clean her face and fix her makeup. Hearing this, she snorted a laugh and grumbled, "You think I wanted this? Making me sit at home fretting is what would injure my health." Fu Shen choked on these words and resentfully lowered his hands. When Fu Ling was cleaned up, she sat back down next to Fu Shen and looked at his legs, which had a thin blanket lying over them. A worried look appeared on her face involuntarily. Daji, the wounds on your legs. Can they really not be healed?" Dagua. There are so many famous physicians in the capital. Why don't I ask His Highness to help? His Highness has already sent a doctor to diagnose and treat me, Fu Shen said concisely. Fu Ling immediately held her tongue, despair flashing over her face. Shortly, she forced out a happy look once more. As if in self-consolation, she said, "It's all right, even if they can't be healed. It doesn't matter as long as you're alive. Stay in the capital, don't go anywhere, all right?" Her ardent gaze was like a knife, stabbing straight at the bottom of Fu Shen's heart. He didn't want to lie to Fu Ling, but he couldn't bear to make her sad, so all he could do was give a vague, "Mm-hmm." Fu Ling finally let herself be coaxed into happiness, a trace of a genuine smile appearing. She chatted at length with him for a while, then suddenly remembered something and asked, "All right, has our family sent anyone to come see you since you've been back?" Had she not mentioned it, Fu Shen wouldn't even have remembered that family, so he gave a grim laugh in place of an answer. Fu Ling said helplessly, "I used to think that even if she didn't like us, she was after all the family matriarch. At any rate, she would have to make nice on the surface. I didn't think she would take cutting ties to this extreme." Since when do we have any ties with her? They were all severed in one clean cut when I moved out, and there's no need for you to accept a compromise just because she's your elder," Fu Shen said carelessly. "All she cares about now is Fu Ya. Just you wait. See when that darling son of hers will lay her a golden egg." This time, not just Fu Ling, but even the servant who had come from the Duke of Ying Manor laughed. We were having a nice chat. Why mention something so annoying? Fu Shen wasn't in the mood to get tied up with domestic trivialities. What about you? How are you getting along in the prince's manor? Everything is going well, and his highness is very good to me. Fu Ling turned slightly. Like a little girl, she took his sleeve and shook it. Quietly, she said, Actually, I was hoping you could come back to the capital this year. What's the matter? Fu Shen was instantly on alert. What happened? Has the family been bullying you again? It wasn't his fault that he was oversensitive and let his thoughts go astray. All the big brothers in the world were more or less like this. Their concern was often embodied in being ready to back a person against their bullies. It's good news. A slight flush appeared on Fu Ling's face. Dagua, you're going to be an uncle. Oh. Fu Shen had only understood the first sentence. His expression normal, he nodded. After a few breaths, he suddenly realized what the second sentence meant. It was so startled he nearly stood up from his wheelchair on the spot. He raised his voice abruptly. What did you say? Fu Ling put a hand over his still flat lower abdomen and said, all smiles, It's been over 3 months. How? The Marquis of Jinning had for once lost his composure. How old are you? Wait! When did this happen? Fu Ling watched his discomfiture with a smile. Fu Shen smacked himself on the forehead and finally realized that his question had been nonsensical. He laughed in spite of himself. That's really good. Wonderful. In fact, Fu Shen didn't amount to an up-to-standard older brother. Their mother had died young, their stepmother was not affectionate, and he had naturally gone out onto the battlefield early, finding it hard even to come home every year, never mind looking after his little sister. The two of them were only linked by ties of blood. Until right now, he had even thought that he had nothing worth saying to his sister. And Fu Ling was outwardly soft, but inwardly firm. Even under Madame Qin's hands, she had smoothly matured into a fine young lady. The only time she had made a request of Fu Shen, it was because the crown prince had sent word that he intended to take her for his first wife, and she didn't want to marry him. Only then had Fu Shen had an abrupt sense of being an older brother. He had wiped away Fu Ling's tears and told her, If you don't like him, then don't marry him. Don't be scared. I'll take care of everything for you. It was an older brother's mentality doing the mischief. When he looked at Fu Ling, he always thought she was still a dainty, weepy little girl, never willing to say anything straight out, always insisting on tugging at an adult's sleeve first. He hadn't thought that in the blink of an eye she would be married and a wife, and in another blink of an eye, about to be a mother. When he heard that she was pregnant, after his excitement had passed, Fu Shen didn't dare to keep her at his manor for long. This person who didn't believe in gods or ghosts had unexpectedly turned superstitious. He was afraid that he and the manor full of soldiers who had come fresh from the battlefield had too much vitality, which would be bad for the child. He simply chased Fu Ling out. Only when she had reached the gate and been helped into the carriage by her maid did Fu Shen say earnestly through the window, Take good care of yourself. I'm staying in the capital for now. I'm not going anywhere. You get through your pregnancy without worrying. Don't put yourself to any trouble. Fu Ling was about to cry again. Holding back sobs, she said, Just look what my Gaga says. Who would dare to put me in any trouble? Right. Fu Shen agreed warmly. Gaga will take care of anything and everything for you. Go on. The Marquise Manor front gate shut once more. Uncle Fu returned inside, pushing Fu Shen. Midway there, Fu Shen suddenly said, Remember to go to the storehouse and collect some nourishing medicinal ingredients. Take some bolts of silk and furs of various colors, and send them to Prince Key Manor another day. Uncle Fu said, Is this a gift for the young lady? Should I add something for His Highness? Not counting today, Prince Key Manor has sent quite a lot of gifts lately. Fu Shen nodded. I remember there's a gold star dragon tail inkstone in the study. Go get that later and think of a few other things to add. The last moment he hit upon the notion of going to the study, but the study had long been sealed off and disused. The old servant was worried there would be an accumulation of dust inside, and ordered it swept before daring to let Fu Shen enter. He hadn't thought that trouble would come of this sweeping. While Fu Shen was looking for the inkstone, he discovered an unfamiliar long wooden box on the desk. This didn't belong to him, but someone had displayed it on the table, front and center, as if deliberately putting it there for him to see. The wooden box was very light. There was a noise when he shook it, as if it contained a thin stick. Fu Shen was very wary. He turned it over and over, inspecting it several times. When he determined that there was no booby trap, he at last carefully lifted the lid. His hand suddenly went rigid in midair. His eyes froze altogether. A damaged black crossbow bolt lay hidden quietly in the box. Its shaft nearly snapped in two, its tip twisted, as if it had struck something hard. This thing was familiar enough to strike fear into the heart. No one in the world could have a deeper impression of it than Fu Shen. On the 9th day of the 9th month, in Tangzhou's Qingshan Gap, in an instant of life and death peril as the stones fell, this was the cold bolt that had come from behind and it brushed past him. What a way to end a chapter. All right. You know the drill. And I apologize. I hear myself getting raspier. I hope it still sounds okay. Do my best. Got 2 more. Chapter 7. As if he had been slapped in the face, Fu Shen's ears rang. His heart beat wildly. This arrow seemed to take him back into those nightmarish memories, the boulder falling from overhead. His crippled legs seemed to regain sensation, sending up the pain of breaking bone strong enough to knock a person unconscious. He bent over sharply, his back aching. This was an automatic gesture of self-protection. Bean-sized beads of sweat dripped from his temples, trickling down his gaunt cheeks to his neck. Under the pale skin, the veins protruded, as if a ferocious beast about to break through there was buried. There was a cracking sound. The hard wooden box hadn't withstood his strength. It was split apart from being squeezed. Splinters of broken wood stuck out, firmly pricking Fu Shen's palms. But this fine, sharp pain was like an acupuncture needle, instantly going through brain and bone, fixing his wavering soul in place. The heavy morass was punctured by the daylight. The earth-shaking nightmare quickly dispersed. Fu Shen, cold sweat streaming from him, raised his head. He hadn't cried, but there was actually redness in his eyes. They were bloodshot. His thick black eyelashes hung low like feathers. revealing a seemingly blood-stained grim gaze like that of a trapped beast. His gaze smoothly moved to the wooden box on the table. He suddenly found that a trace of white edge showed in the crack. It turned out that there was also a note caught between the inner and outer layers of the box. About an hour later, Xiao Sun, standing watch outside the door, who heard Fu Shen call for someone from inside. He opened the door and came, then frowned. He had a feeling that in addition to the smell of burning charcoal in the room, there was also a faint scent of blood. Lord Marquis? Fu Shen sat at the desk, his expression calm and undisturbed, perhaps a little colder than usual. He was toying with a long wooden box. Fresh blood had dyed his palms red. Even the box was dotted with blood stains. But it was as if he couldn't feel pain. His bearing as usual, as he said, "Who has gone into the study within the last 3 days? Get them all over here." Xian Sun was startled by his blood-covered hands. Xiao Sun. Xiao Sun. Man, back to the name thing. Xiao Sun was startled by his blood-covered hands and wanted him to dress the wound first. But Fu Shen didn't so much as look up. Xiao Sun didn't dare to disobey him. Quickly bent his head and agreed. As he was about to exit, Fu Shen suddenly called him back. "Wait." "Yes, sir?" Xiao Sun asked. He was briefly silent and said, "Bring the bodyguards too." Following the misadventure at Kinsha Gap, the first thing Fu Shen had done after waking up was to send people to find the crossbow bolt that had nailed itself in the stone. It was only to be expected that they would return with nothing. He had thought that the bolt had been buried under the rolling stones, not expecting that someone had gotten there ahead of him to remove this crucial piece of evidence. But who was capable of this? Capable of moving faster than his people, capable of delivering the evidence right under his nose, and capable of finding the truth so swiftly. And what was the intent behind exposing the truth? Not long after, servants of all heights and mixed ages had filed in to stand in front of him, heads bent and shoulders contracted, with terrified looks in their eyes, each and every one wishing to sink into the earth. Outside the room, meanwhile, stood a group of ferocious Beiyuan cavalry, who from their expression seemed ready to raise their swords and come in to cut people down. Fu Shen's voice was slightly hoarse. It had a peculiar sense of exhaustion to it. He casually tossed the box onto the big red sandalwood desk. Getting straight to the point, he asked, "This box, who saw it? When did it appear in the library? Who put it here?" According to chronological order, the first people to enter the study came forward to identify themselves. All of them shook their heads and said they didn't know, until he came to the servant who had swept the study in the morning, had a vague impression of it. He said that when they had come in, they had seen a box right there on the desk. They had thought it was an old possession of Fu Shen's and hadn't dared to move it thoughtlessly. Everyone's eyes fell on the young page who had come into the study to bring a vase the day before. This was a child of 13 or 14, wearing a drab, short robe and pants. His parents had passed away long ago, and he worked in the Marquis Manor along with his grandfather. He normally hid in the rear kitchen, not coming out. He had never seen such a spectacle. When Fu Shen's gaze swept over him like frost, he panicked at once. He fell to his knees, crying. He kowtowed while calling out, "Spare me, master, spare me!" Fu Shen rubbed the center of his forehead. Crying was giving him a headache. He coldly said, "Shut up." His voice was very soft, but perhaps because he was accustomed to giving orders, every word was very heavy, as if each one could smash a hole in the ground when it fell. The child instantly fell silent, only trembling more fiercely. Fu Shen asked, "Were you the one who brought in this box?" No, it wasn't." "Then who was it?" This one doesn't know." Fu Shen said darkly, "I don't have the patience to watch you sit there and shake. The sooner you make a clean breast of it, the sooner it will be done. I'll give you another chance. Think before you speak." The young page bit his lower lip, his hands constantly wringing the hem of his shirt. At last he couldn't hold out under Fu Shen's might. He quietly told the truth. "This one really isn't sure. It might be Wang Gong'er." Fu Shen was perplexed. "Who is Wang Gong'er?" He's the younger son of the Wang family from the East City's Poplar Canal. He often comes with his father to deliver food to the Marquis Manor. Last night, Grandpa Fu told me to bring a vase to the study, and Wang Gong'er Gao Er wanted to come see what an important person's study looked like, and I thought the Marquis isn't going to go in anyway, so I took him inside." Jiao Sun, Fu Shen said. "Understood," Xiao Sun said. An outsider had trespassed in Marquis Manor's study. While there was nothing important in the study, it was still an enormous slip-up for the bodyguards. Xiao Sun immediately took 2 bodyguards to investigate this. Wang Gaoer. Fu Shen slowly scanned the rings of servants standing beneath him and all of a sudden gave an extremely soft, cold laugh. "It seems I have truly been careless in recent years. I thought that this backyard was better than nothing, with no value that would draw fire. But it turns out that while I can take precautions night and day, thieves inside the house are hard to guard against. There are more holes than in a sieve." Ay, ay, ay. "Today's matter can serve as a lesson to all of you, and to me. Uncle Fu," the servant tottered forward, "please instruct me, Lord Marquis. I'm giving you 3 days to disband all the servants in the manor, send them back to wherever they came from to find their own way. From this day forth, the Marquis' manor will be managed by the Baiyun army. No interlopers are to be permitted here. That's all. Go ahead." From below came the sounds of a crowd of people kneeling. Cries for mercy fell incessantly on the ear. "Lord Marquis! Please be benevolent, Lord Marquis! Leave us a means of making a living!" "Don't make me repeat myself," Fu Shen said impatiently. "Zhao Ding, go supervise." A bodyguard fell out of rank in response, picked the old servant up by the back of his collar, and carried him out. With matters being concisely settled, the rest of the servants, like quails strung together on a rope, followed after with their shoulders hunched, leaving the study in succession. Fu Shen had dealt swiftly and resolutely with a pile of trivialities, but the gloom blocking his chest hadn't eased at all. He was mentally and physically exhausted, so annoyed that he would have loved to close his eyes and simply go belly up. Before this thought could take concrete shape, urgent knocking suddenly came from outside. "Lord Marquis, there's an Imperial Guard come boss outside who said someone gave him a message to pass on to you. Fu Shen was currently enmeshed in the unease brought on by the wooden box. He was unusually sensitive to the words Imperial Guard. He immediately said, "Show him in." Wei Zhuxiao was greeted with looks the whole way. Each of the bodyguards in the manor was a soldier fresh from the battlefield. Their gazes were almost more than this easy-loving Imperial Guard general could bear. By the time he saw Fu Shen sitting in his wheelchair, General Wei practically felt affection for him. He quickly stepped forward to salute him. "I am Wei Zhuxiao. Su Shao. There we go. Su Shao. Commander of the Left Shenshu Corps. My respects to Lord Marquis." These names are going to kill me. Right now, Fu Shen suspected everyone he saw, but the North Yemen Imperial Guard was under Yan Xiaohan's command and couldn't raise too much suspicion in him. Strange to say, while Fu Shen and Yan Xiaohan's codes of conduct were poles apart, there was a rather profound openness between them. He had a delicate faith in this thug who was notorious among the court, so he seemed much milder facing Wei Zhuxiao. Yeah, there we go. Wei Zhuxiao. No need for such courtesy. Please sit, General Wei. Pour some tea. Wei Zhuxiao didn't dare to be too friendly with him, lest observers be suspicious and jealous. So he got straight to the point. "There's no need for the Lord Marquis to go to the trouble of entertaining me. I'll leave when I've said what I've had to say. Our Lord Imperial Investigator was just summoned to an interview by His Majesty. Before leaving, he instructed me to pass on this message to the Lord Marquis. Lately, a rumor has secretly been passing through all the noble households in the capital, saying that you, have the Long Yang proclivity. You must be prudent about this matter. What the Lord Imperial Investigator means is that the Lord Marquis must be especially careful and deal with this as soon as possible." This news was no less than a bolt out of the blue. Fu Shen was thunderstruck, the blow so heavy that he went numb from the top of his skull to his heels. "What did you say?" Wei Zhuxiao said. His Highness also said, no matter what happens, he asked that Lord Marquis to practice patience for the time being and on no account act rashly. Fu Shen's expression abruptly changed. "What does that mean?" Wei Zhuxiao understood nothing. He looked innocently back at him. There were too many things, one after another, each one solid as a rock, choking him so that he could hardly catch his breath. Countless thoughts and suspicions grew rapidly, like bewildering obsessions, instantly overtaking his whole mind. No matter what, he couldn't act rashly. The iron bolt in the box, the note between the box's layers, the Wang Gaoer who had snuck into the study. Did Yan Xiaohan mean one of these things, or were there many plots he had yet to discover hidden in the dark? Was this oracular knowledge, or was it a premonition? Lord Marquis! Lord Marquis! As his mind was wandering, the old servant burst panting into the study, breaking off Fu Shen's frenzied thoughts, which were on the point of driving him out of his mind. He pulled his feet free of those deep-rooted preoccupations, abruptly realizing with a start that he had let himself get caught running up against an insoluble problem. He had gone too far. "What is it?" Uncle Fu excitedly said. "An imperial decree. We've received an imperial decree. A eunuch has come to invite you to go receive an imperial edict." Wei Zhuxiao was extremely tactful. Hearing this, he immediately stood. "Since you are busy, Lord Marquis, I will take my leave now." Fu Shen met his gaze and nodded understandingly. "Uncle Fu, please take this gentleman out by the side gate. When I have changed into court dress, I will go see the imperial envoy." One sec. Inside Yangxian Palace. Yangshin. There you go, Yangshin Palace. Mengui. After the crown prince left, Emperor Yuan Tai suddenly changed his form of address. Yan Xiaohan froze momentarily, then respectfully answered, "Your Majesty." "Lately, we have had many a time woken suddenly in the middle of the night," Emperor Yuan Tai said. "At times we are clearly alone in our sleeping quarters, yet there always seems to be someone fast asleep on the other side of the bed. What do you think this means?" By the way, when the emperor is talking, this is a cultural thing too, emperors in this time would refer to themselves in the plural. Like, we is capitalized here. And our, just as a little contextual things when the emperor is speaking. Because that's kind of cool. It's culture. Anyway, though Yan Xiaohan was a military official at any rate, he had read some books. When he heard this, he was immediately bathed in cold sweat. His thoughts moved lightning fast. His reactions were exceptionally quick. Without further ado, he immediately knelt with a thud to beg forgiveness. "Responding to your Majesty. Your Majesty is the true Son of Heaven, protected by the purple star, impervious to evil forces. It must be that scoundrels and villains are feigning a haunting in the shadows, hatching some plot. Guarding the imperial quarters at night is this subject's responsibility. I have been ineffective, resulting in a disturbance in the palace chambers and causing discomfort to your Majesty. This crime cannot be atoned for." His admission of error was very skillful. This had not been Emperor Yun Tai's intention at all. He couldn't tell whether Yan Xiaohan was really dumb or only playing dumb, so he simply raised the subject more obviously. "It is not a supernatural matter. It is our mind that is uneasy. In the capital, there are the North and South Imperial Guards, the troops of the Imperial City, the 5 great capital barracks, nearly 300,000 soldiers. Yet we often look around and feel surrounded by tigers and wolves. Sometimes we even wonder whether the empire of Great Zhao, the empire of the Sun's family, is truly in our hands, or whether outsiders are permitted to control it." With this mentioned, the sword had been drawn and the arrow bent. His intent had been made plain. Yan Xiaohan truly couldn't keep playing dumb. All he could do was bow and say, "Please speak openly, Your Majesty." Emperor Yun Tai asked, "Mengui, do you still remember when I made an exception to promote you to the position of Imperial Investigator of the Feilong Guard? What I said at that time?" In its previous form, the Feilong Guard had been the Imperial Feilong Stables, the place where the palace had reared horses, overseen by a eunuch. During the reign of Emperor Chunhua, the third emperor of Great Zhao, the previous court's officials had grown in power and gained control of the Imperial Guard for a time. The emperor had been like a puppet, his throne in immense danger. In order to make a breakthrough, Emperor Chunhua had changed the Imperial Feilong Stables into the Feilong Guard, going through a eunuch to regain control over the North Yemen Imperial Guard. The Feilong Guard had in a single leap become trusted subordinates of the emperor, with enormous power. They would not involve themselves without the personal word of the emperor. After this, the North Yemen Imperial Guard had been controlled by eunuchs until the 20th year of Yuantai, when the previous imperial investigator of the Feilong Guard, Duan Linglong, passed away, and Emperor Yuntai unexpectedly made an exception, breaking with tradition to promote the then general of the less Shenwu Guard, Yan Xiaohan, to be the new imperial investigator. It remained a mystery to this day what Yan Xiaohan had relied on to reach this position. But it couldn't be denied that Emperor Yuntai did in fact depend very heavily on him. And Yan Xiaohan had in fact done well as an independent official, turning the Feilong Guard into the sharpest knife in the emperor's hand. He remembered to this day what the last words of that imperial edict had been. You are thus commanded to undertake the post of the imperial investigator of the Feilong Guard, represent us in patrolling all points and supervising the officials. All your eyes see, all your ears hear. Wherever you go, wherever your sword points, it will all be be as though we are there in person. Sorry about that. Yan Xiaohan said, Your Majesty's earnest expectations are carved on my heart. I would not dare to forget them until I die. It is not in vain that we have set stone by you all these years. Emperor Yuntai straightened up and gravely said, We wish you to perform a certain assignment. This assignment may take 2 or 3 years, or perhaps it may take longer. But if you are able to succeed, we will hence be able to sleep easy. We are going to confer a marriage between you and Fu Shen. There it is. All right. This will be the last chapter we read tonight. Chapter 8. Actually, I think I have just enough. Oh, have to do. Chapter 8. Yan Xiaohan's heart abruptly missed a beat. Not even caring that he was being rude, he stared at Emperor Yuntai in astonishment. Your Majesty? What the hell? This was absolutely preposterous. He and Fu Shen had been trading insults in court only 3 months ago. The whole capital knew that the two of them couldn't stand each other. Why did the emperor suddenly want to make them a couple? The Fu family is deep-rooted in the northern frontier. They pose a serious threat from within. The statement was just like a pail of cold water to the face, instantly soaking him to the skin. Without anything further needing to be said, the cause and effect behind arranging this marriage laid itself out in its entirety in Yao Shahan's mind. No wonder those rumors had suddenly appeared in the capital. No wonder the crown prince had just looked at him with that expression. They had planned all this. Emperor Yuntai's fears concerning the Fu family were by no means a recent development. So could the events of Fu Shen being attacked and injured, then returning to the capital, have been another part of his plans? Probably. No, that was wrong. The primary goal of the assassination attempt had been for Fu Shen to die. That he had been injured but not died was a mishap. There were too many variables in arranged marriage, and the control it would exert over Fu Shen was next to nothing. This was obviously an impromptu decision, not something planned from the start. It seemed more like it was taking advantage of the rumors. But the possibility that this was a new plan conceived after the previous plan failed still couldn't be excluded. More crucially, where had the rumor that Fu Shen is a cutsleeve actually come from? I will be honest with you. The Crown Prince suggested this to us earlier. Apparently, the rumors in the street say that Fu Shen has unusual interests. We can use this arranged marriage as an opportunity to remove him from the position of Beiyan's commander and bring in a new commander. The Crown Prince, Sun Yun Liang. What grudge did he have against Fu Shen? Half a beat late, Yan Xiaohan recalled that it seemed that the Crown Prince had once wished to make Fu Shen's younger sister his first wife. And because Fu Shen had persisted in not yielding, the Crown Prince had politely been turned down by the Fu family. He had reported this to Emperor Yuntai. Emperor Yuntai had also ought to understand how much selfish desire was involved in this stratagram of the Crown Prince's. But compared to controlling Fu Shen, this bit of selfishness perhaps wasn't worth mentioning in his view. Emperor Yuntai changed the subject. This plan is feasible enough. But once Fu Shen is gone, who is qualified to take the position of Beiyan commander in his place? The Crown Prince recommended Yang Xijing. He shook his head and seemed to find this funny and a little exasperating. He brushed it away with a slight statement. He's still young after all, and his thoughts are shallow. The father and son duo were about to make Yan Xiaohan lose his temper. Yang Xijing was the son of Empress Yang's older brother, the Crown Prince's cousin, who'd been made general of the Right Jumen Guard through the Empress's favor. However down to heel Fu Shen might be, he was still the Duke of Ying's eldest son by the first wife, first-rank official of the court, the Marquise of Jingning, who'd fought his way off the battlefield. What the hell was Yang Xijing? A rich kid who had been promoted through favor? Yet they dared to dream of putting him in Fu Shen's place? Did they really think the Beiying army's 200,000 cavalrymen were all dead? The mighty heir apparent to the throne could actually come up with such an contemptible means of injuring an estimable subject. When one thought that this person would become emperor in the future, how could one avoid feeling cold at heart? Seeing that he didn't speak, Emperor Yuntai continued. We are unwilling to permit the Fu family to gain power unchecked. But we also do not wish to destroy our own defenses. The Beiyuan cavalry is Great Zhao's line of defense at the northern border. The danger from the Tartars and the Zi, have yet to fade. Rashly changing commanders might shake military morale. This requires slow action. We have thought long and hard. You have resided in the capital for a long time. You ought to move on. Lord Yan, who has just inwardly thought mockingly, what the hell is Yang Xijing, instantly found himself falling into the same situation. There was nothing for it. Before the youngest general of Great Zhao, all of his lower-ranked peers were nothing. He lowered himself once more and kowtowed to beg forgiveness. This subject is talentless and unworthy. I dare not accept your Majesty's kindness. Please reconsider, your Majesty. You are unwilling? Said Emperor Yuntai. Clenching his teeth, Yan Xiaohan said, Pardon my offense, your Majesty. Menggui, sorry. Emperor Yuntai's tone suddenly turned cold. We recall that you once told us yourself that you are not interested in women, and we promised to find you a marriage that would be to your wishes. As Fu Shen walks the same path as you and is exceptional in terms of family background, talent, and appearance, why are you still unwilling? Cold sweat appeared on Yan Xiaohan's back. He was just about to close his eyes and make up a lie to the effect of, my heart lies elsewhere, to fob off on His Majesty, but Emperor Yuntai raised a hand and tossed a bright yellow imperial edict in front of him. The jade scroll handle clattered when it hit the gray tile. Half the carving on it broke off. Tiny fragments of jade splashed on Yan Xiaohan's sleeve. "Take a look," said Emperor Yun Tai. Yan Xiaohan slowly unrolled the imperial edict. "By virtue of the mandate of heaven, the emperor decrees. The Marquis of Jingning Fushen, general, defender of the nation, descendant of the Duke of Yingfu Jian, who as an official for 6 years has performed many meritorious services, afflicted foreign enemies with dread, and faithfully protected the nation, is looked upon by us as an aide with profound favor. Commander of the left Shenwu Guard and imperial investigator of the Feilong Guard, Yan Xiaohan, descendant of a noble family of the capital, loyal and upright guardian of the imperial chambers, with evident virtue and benevolence, of heroic bearing and handsome appearance, proficient in literary and military arts alike, is commended highly by us. These two individuals are a perfect match made by heaven. Today we decree that a marriage between them will be arranged and direct the officials to select an auspicious date to hold the wedding. It is hoped that the two of you will be of one heart and one mind, do greatest honor to this nation, and not disappoint our intentions. The emperor has spoken. We have already sent someone to the Marquis of Jingning Manor to proclaim this edict." He watched Yan Xiaohan fixedly with a cold gaze. "If you have made up your mind, you may pick up the imperial edict and rise to take your leave." The underlying meaning was that if he hadn't made up his mind, he could kneel here until he died. Of Yan Xiaohan and Fu Shen, one was rich in military achievements, praised by all as a faithful official, able general, and the other was an eager fortune hunter, spurned by the world as a lackey and a thug. No one would have thought they belonged on the same path. But right now, the emperor's weighty words were written on this bright yellow imperial edict. Henceforth, these two people who followed different roads would have to walk toward the same destination. Even more absurd than this imperial edict arranging their marriage was that Yan Xiaohan's first reaction upon seeing it hadn't been anger, but a cold satisfaction. Not without malice, he thought. What will Fu Shen's reaction be when he receives this imperial edict arranging this marriage? This pillar of the court, shouldering duty and righteousness, dutifully striving to his utmost, was being trampled into the mud like this by the emperor he was devoted to heart and soul. Could he still continue to hold the nation in his heart, wholly ungrudgingly? Would he swallow the insult and accept the imperial degree? Or would he put on his armor and leave the capital, raising the banner of the Baiyun army, simply revolt? Emperor Yun Tai was waiting for his answer, but Lord Yan seemed to have forgotten where he was. His mind began to race in irrelevant directions. Just then, the doors of the hall suddenly opened a crack. The high Eunuch Tian, stepped in on tiptoe, quickly came alongside the emperor and whispered something into his ear. Emperor Yun Tai was just inwardly offended about Yan Xiaohan not knowing what was good for him. Hearing Eunuch Tian's report, his expression turned as overcast as though water were about to drip from it. Clenching his teeth, he said, "Go on. Repeat what you just said to Minister Yan." Eunuch Tian obediently came up in front of Yan Xiaohan. "The Marquis of Jinning is unwilling to accept the decree. He is currently kneeling in front of the palace gate, unwilling to rise, requesting to see His Majesty." Emperor Yun Tai facetiously asked, "Tian Tong, how is the weather outside? The Marquis of Jinning is not in good health. I hope he doesn't freeze." Eunuch Tian understood at once. Beg leave to inform your majesty. It is raining outside. At first it was only a drizzle, but now the rain has strengthened. Well, the Marquise of Jingning has already waited outside for an hour. Perhaps I should bring him an umbrella. The main hall was suffused with a faint earthy smell particular to rainy weather. Petrikov! The floor tiles were icy cold, painful to kneel on. Without needing to imagine it, Yan Xiaohan knew that Fu Shen would be in 100, 1,000 times more pain than him. Apart from the pain, there would also be his heart's blood, colder than the autumn rain. He had at last understood the Emperor's intentions. What Emperor Yun Tai wanted him to agree to wasn't only this absurd arranged marriage, but also to taking military authority over the Beiyuan cavalry bit by bit from Fu Shen's hands. From the first, he had no intention of considering Yan Xiaohan's objections. His queries had been only feigned civility. In front of the Emperor, Yan Xiaohan had no right to say no. The imperial investigator of the Feilong Guard was an upper third-rank official, while the commander of the Beiyan army was an upper first-rank official. If he could only rise to that position, splendor and wealth would be near at hand. Moreover, with the Emperor's support behind him, kicking aside a crippled commander didn't seem to pose much difficulty. However awesome Fu Shen was, he still didn't have 3 heads and 6 arms, and furthermore, he was a man of honor who wouldn't betray his country even in the face of colossal insult. No matter what angle you looked at it from, this was a worthwhile bargain. Only Fu Shen lay in the way, casting a dark and bloody pall over his glorious future. The passage of time suddenly became extremely slow. After an incalculable time, the pendulum of the western striking clock in a side chamber struck several times in a row, breaking the silence that filled the hall. Emperor Yun Tai was starting to lose his patience. He was just about to give another potent dose when the long-silent Yan Xiaohan suddenly spoke. There is one thing I do not understand. I earnestly request that your majesty enlighten me. Say it, Yan Xiaohan said. The Fu family has been upright and honest for generations. Fu Shen has defended the border for many years with absolutely no disloyalty. Moreover, he is tantamount to an invalid now. To arrange a marriage at just this moment is not only likely to incur the criticism of the courtiers, but will also enhance Fu Shen's influence. The subject is stupid and does not understand why your majesty insists on acting thus at this time. These words seemed to mean that he was relenting. Emperor Yuan Tai inwardly released a breath and involuntarily revealed something of a confiding air. Fu Shen is indeed a loyal subject, but what he is loyal to is not us. To be a military commander is to be a divine weapon in the hand of a sovereign. Fu Shen admittedly has a keen edge that is hard to resist, but if a sword has too many thoughts of its own, it does not put a person at his ease. Among subjects, there are those who are loyal to the sovereign and those who are loyal to the nation. Fu Shen is like his uncle, Fu Tingzin, a subject loyal to the nation. Tingzin. If there is a danger that a sword's point will turn to aim at its master, how can we pass him on to future generations with confidence? The Beiyan cavalry guard the northern border, their swords pointing outward. They are divine force, the best defense. But when their swords point inward, they will only be some 1,000 of li from the capital. Yan Xiaohan once again inwardly cursed Fu Shen. In all likelihood, that fool had done some hard but thankless job and offended the emperor in the process. His Beiyan army was sealed up tight as a drum. If the Fei Long Guard wanted to dig up information, it would simply be as hard as ascending to heaven. Had he known what had happened, prepared a countermeasure in advance, he would never have been caught unawares by the emperor and the crown prince like this. Mengui, you have been at our side for a long time. You are our most handy confidant, Emperor Yuntai said. You are different from Fu Shen. If only you take this step, your future prospects will be boundless. If you persist in your refusal, we will give you another choice. Yan Xiaohan raised his eyes, looking at the emperor high on his throne. The weighty words were pronounced. There was grim murder staining the ice-cold phrases as they rolled one after another down the golden steps. Either you accept the decree and marry Fu Shen, or you kill Fu Shen for us. Time had passed, and the world had changed. As much as Emperor Yuntai had once relied upon the Fu family, so he now feared Fu Shen. It had even reached the point that he could not feel glad if he did not get rid of him. Yan Xiaohan picked up the imperial degree that a corner had broken off of and rolled it up. He had not ceased to kneel. Now he lowered himself deeply, prostrating himself. This subject offers earnest thanks to your majesty's great favor. Scant daylight lit the inside of the hall, shining on the plaque hanging high up that read Justice and Benevolence. This autumn rainstorm had broken with tempestuous force. There was water pooled everywhere outside the palace gates. Yellowed leaves whirled and scattered. Amidst the dimness that filled the eye, the rain-soaked red clothes, like a make-believe lingering, unwilling to fall, were unusually striking to the eye. Yan Xiaohan, his gaze fixed straight ahead, walked up in front of the perfectly upright back. From on high he coldly said, His Majesty won't see you. Don't waste your time. Go home. Fu Shen didn't tilt back his head, only raised his eyelids, his gaze level with Zhao Han's legs. His manner was haughtier than that of the person standing. Did His Majesty send you here? This matter has already been settled. There is no benefit in saying anything further. Don't ask. Fu Shen composedly said, You've agreed. Yan Xiaohan seemed to suddenly be enraged by him. The anger that he had pent up inside the palace towered to the sky. All came down right at him in torrents. I did. What did you expect? Everything I have now, my power, my position, were all given to me by His Majesty. What right do I have to refuse him? He seized Fu Shen's collar. You have the face to ask me? Aren't you noble and virtuous? Aren't you devoted heart and soul to the nation, your loyalty pledged to His Majesty? Thunderclaps and rain are all the blessings of the sovereign, so why have you come now to kneel before the palace gates to beg His Majesty to withdraw his decree? Shouldn't you cheerfully accept the decree and thank him for his kindness? For whose benefit do you kneel here? The rain fell harder and harder. Yan Xiaohan bent back down and leaned close to Fu Shen, so close that he was even pressed against his cheek, ice-cold from the rain. The man's hoarse roar was kept low in his throat, drowned amid the swelling sounds of the rain, so faint that it didn't dare to enter anyone's ear, yet Fu Shen still heard it clearly. You are the mighty Beiyun commander. Why stay here and put up with this prosecution? Why don't you rebel? Fu Shen blinked, the water droplets off his eyelashes. Suddenly, he laughed. All his resentment and helplessness, his dejection, his fellow feeling, his apathetic insight and bone-deep suffering were collected in that laugh. Yan Xiaohan gave a start. It was as if he had been scorched by that laugh. He abruptly let go. Fu Shen briefly closed his eyes. It seemed to be some form of concealment. Soaked by the rain, his face was so white it was practically transparent. Water droplets rolled from the ends of his hair and the corners of his eyes, their tracks zigzagging. There was a terrifying fragility about his overly thin jaw and neck. In fact, I know that His Majesty won't withdraw the order. Even kneeling here until my legs break won't do any good. I just can't let it alone. Do I owe you another favor? I'm truly sorry. But Lord Yan, when a gentleman conducts himself in society, there are actions he takes and actions he must not take. The Bayan Cavalry's illustrious name and glory after decades of defending the country. How could I let it turn to eternal infamy because of my own selfish interests? Perhaps I cannot be a gentleman, but I will not be a criminal. The wind blustered and the rain poured. The dark clouds were heavy. There was darkness between heaven and earth. Today's disgrace will one day be repaid. Each word was soaked in blood and carried the sandstorms of the north. Falling amid the standing water, it seemed to be wrapped in a layer of ice. Yan Shaohan had nothing to say, no answer to give. He had thought that he understood Fu Shen, so he had looked down upon his excessively naive persistence. Only today did he discover that Fu Shen was far more than what he had understood. He was entirely incapable of overlooking his unfailing perseverance. He sighed, his fury entirely extinguished by the rain. Yan Shaohan reached out, planning to help him up. He couldn't stay here in the pouring rain. But before his hand had touched Fu Shen, without any warning, Fu Shen suddenly collapsed forward. Fortunately, Yan Shaohan was quick of eye and deft of hand. He reached out and made a grab, and Fu Shen fell right into his arms. Fu Shen! And that is the end of chapter 8, where we will be stopping tonight. It's really quite a good place to stop it. We got the intro and kind of some of the background on a lot of our characters, the setting, and have our first real kind of conflict. So now we get to see where it's going. Got some plot set up. Gonna have to figure out if we're gonna kind of keep it this many chapters or shorten it, because that ran a bit longer than it usually does. I kind of separated out the chapters, but I might thin it out a little bit. We'll see. We'll see how next week goes, because I think this one had an extra chapter with the prologue. We'll see. But we will still be starting Thursday at 8 CST. And I look forward to seeing you there. I hope you're there. We kind of is a little bit of a cliffhanger. We'll see what happens. But I'm pretty excited about this. I'm pretty happy about this. I cannot wait. But I will hopefully see you Thursday at 8 CST for the next parts of this. Right? Can't wait for the next parts. Mars rover. I agree. All right. Well, I am going to probably go make another cup of tea because my throat is killing me. But I hope you all have a good night. And if anyone's watching this later, hope you have a good day or night whenever you are watching this. Until next time, next Thursday. Bye. Or this coming Thursday, not next Thursday. Bye.